fucking coming in and out here. I don't know. I feel like this is a good spot right here. Throw one of these.
We're good to go on those
Yeah, there we
fronts.
go. That feels better to me. 'Cause I feel like it's going to angle. I move.
Check.
I
Good.
weeble, I wobble.
All right.
This seems
Number
okay.
39. All right.
Yeah.
Bad ideas, good stories. Number 39.
I'm Dusty,
I'm Pat.
and we're back.
And we're back. We don't have a clue what we're doing.
I forgot what time we do this at.
We're
What is involved?
well, a long time ago, my friend, I think I mentioned it a few times, Jen, she does the Why Choose One podcast. But hers are like, mostly audio, and she records them on her phone. She doesn't do the video editing, and they're definitely not an hour and a half long each. They're like sometimes 8 minutes to a half hour. But she said, you do 30, and then you get your groove. And that's pretty much the standard.
We're getting there. We're grooving.
Yeah, we're
grooving it.
Working out the
Groovingly.
kinks, so to speak. Yeah. And
So you want to attack kink, eh?
yeah, right off the bat. I got some stuff
Speaking of
written
bat,
down.
wiffle ball bat. Let's
Wiffle
go.
bat.
Let's go.
Oh man, I remember being a kid listening to that Beastie Boys. I did it like this. I did it like that. I did it with a wiffle ball bat. So yeah, Paul Revere. I could still. My kid was surprised because this is a perfect example. She's like, "Dad, I found this band I like a lot. They're called the Beastie Boys." Yeah, you like that band?
Yeah. Well, I'm
So-
glad you found them.
Yeah.
That's the best. The point, I guess. But
It's this obscure old band, and they're
Yeah.
like doing hip hop before hip hop was cool. You
yeah,
know, like a little bit.
and I think
right?
they might be Jewish.
Yeah. Right. What's up with that?
Never heard of this.
They're hardly exploited by the music industry.
Yeah. Dude, sad news. Yeah, they're fucking dead.
Yeah, that'll happen. That
Yeah.
happens to the best of us.
Best of bands.
Well, you know, and it's funny because Beastie Boys, they started off as a punk band.
Yep.
And they had, I think it was Pollywog Soup or something like that was their 7-inch or their demo, like punk rock.
Okay.
And the thing about them that was really interesting because they were into like the New York hardcore scene and the underground punk stuff in New York. And in those areas like the Bronx and Brooklyn and what is it? I guess the Lower East Side of New York City is also where hip hop was starting off at the same time, right? So when they got into hip hop, it was legitimate and honest. It was from the roots, and who's really going to tell these Italian and Jewish kids, "Oh, you can't do it. That's our music." Well, we're from the same neighborhood,
Yeah,
you know?
and they're
like-
crushing at it.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the catchiest shit of all time. Well, and it's because it's totally like that License to Ill. Like, there's lots of stuff in there that you can definitely feel like the punk rock vibe to it.
yeah. And I think that was a Rick
No
Rubin.
Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Yeah, and No Sleep Till Brooklyn, Fight for Your Right to Party. Paul Revere was the only real one that I remember of being like full hip hop,
Sure.
you know? And in grade 8, I knew every word to that song, you know? And like, and my kid, that's the thing. She was surprised the other day when I just busted it out. And I just like went verse after verse after verse when she put it on. And she's like, "Oh, you're a nerd, Dad." I'm like, What? Sorry, It's not Billie Eilish. you know?
Yeah. And that's news that you're a nerd while we're at it?
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
When did you find out that I was a nerd exactly? How I'm a nerd about everything I've ever nerdingly nerded?
That's a good point.
I was thinking about that a little while ago, actually, about like with the club, like Bastards, that I was like, it's kind of just a bunch of nerds. We just like stuff that's cool. Like they're just nerds about stuff that's cool. And you should be nerdy about things that you
Well, that's what I
dig.
found when I went to Japan because they've got the same sort of keenerness. Like, you're into this thing, I'm super into this thing. Look what I found. And a guy from Saskatchewan who's never seen the thing's like,
Yep.
that's super cool.
Well, both are, one is a literal island, the other one might as well be an island.
Yeah, a
culturally.
landlocked island.
Yeah.
And so that's just it. When I met people there, they were as into the shit we were into as I was, you know, like collectible old toys was a huge thing. And one guy, he ran this place called DV8, and it's an old school skateboard, punk rock, chopper shop. But he goes to the USA, and he's got people in the USA that ship him things to resell in Japan. But he also has some of the coolest, legitimate, vintage, old stuff that you've ever found. Like old school first run Caballero shirts and Suicidal Tendencies hats put out by the band in the 80s and chrome German helmet chopper style from the 1960s. And it's pretty reasonably priced. And the fact that you walk into his store and you're like, "Where did you find this Dogtown deck?" He's like, "Original," you know? And you're like, "What?"
That's wild.
Yeah. And it was really cool because he grabbed me on the street. I was walking down the street and he's like, "Skull skates. PD's Hot Shop, Vancouver. And I'm like, yeah, this is weird. In the middle of like, I don't know what town it was. Might have been Nara or Kyoto. But, and then he's like, come look. So we go into his shop, and it was the coolest little shop I've ever seen. And that's it. He closed the door, and he starts pulling out old club vests. Like outlaw club vests. He's like, here's one I'm not supposed to have. And he pulls out like an old school, like 60s HA vest. And I'm like, ooh, here you're pretty risky, you know? But yeah, he had some of the coolest little collectible stuff. And they're keeners, you know?
Be a nerd.
Yeah.
Nerd it up nerdingly.
Yeah. And I think that's rad, you know, as opposed to the nonchalant or blasé attitude, like, yeah, so.
Well, and what's been hitting home for me, because I've been leaning in my nerdy side a little more lately, and then there's this skateboarding thing I follow on Facebook, and the one guy gets on, and like fully grown adult man got on there, and his new deck, it was a dope like creature deck, but the top was like a Pokemon character of some sort, and he's like, oh, it's like, you know, my two favorite things, skating and Pokemon, and there's like, you know, 150 thumbs ups on that, and all these people, yeah, bro, who's your favorite? And I'm just like, you guys aren't tearing this guy apart for this? Okay, I guess it's a different time.
It is a different time.
I didn't. Okay, cool. Well, but whatever. I don't give a fuck. But like, yeah, it just kind of tripped me out a bit because I was like, I don't know, man. Full grown man with a cartoon character on your top of your fucking skateboard. Most places you would get mocked for that. What I'm familiar with.
Well, times
I'm wrong.
Definitely changing. Like one of my favorite hardcore bands is Slapshot, and the singer Jack Kelly from Slapshot, he's got anime tattoos all over him. And like, this is a guy who used to get smashed in the face with microphones and hockey sticks and like fight people and at the gigs. And he was just wearing this shirt the other day I saw on one of his feeds, and it's just like an anime girl on the front of his shirt.
No, half rabbit is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Make her half rabbit.
And this is the dude, he's like, you get drunk and fall down on the floor, we'll step on you and watch blood pour. Like in the 80s, like they were scary dudes, and now, exactly. No. Kawaii, kawaii culture.
I have no idea.
It's funny watching that happen, right?
Yeah. What the fuck do I know?
Well, we're getting older, and you can't always be pissed off for the rest of your life, right? And
that seems like that's part of my. I actually wrote down transitional time, and that feels like part of my transitional time thing. That I'm like, you know, you can't be pissed off for the rest of your life. You can't just keep having that be the thing that motivates you and whatnot. So yeah, because I was talking about that before I left the house, and I was like, fuck, I feel like I'm like, and in a good way, because like I meditated this morning, and for the first time in quite a while, and like I had a fuck of a time with it. It felt like there was like swirling whirlpools going around in my fucking brain where I couldn't grab anything, couldn't focus, couldn't clear a path, couldn't do anything, and I'm like, fuck this. But then I'm like, oh, it's just because I haven't done it in a long time, and I haven't worked this tool out that like is how I've gotten anything positive done in the last almost 20 fucking years now, is like visualization and then actualization. You know, like where do I want to be? Now, how the fuck do I get there? Now, what's the first step to doing that, right? And I have not been doing that. I just realized for like the last 2 years, basically, because I've been just like dodging pain. I don't want to do anything that hurts or is hard because like 2019 was the worst year of my fucking life, and since then it's just been like, you know, I don't want to. If it's cold out, I'm not gonna go out and fucking do it. If it's gonna hurt in some way, I want nothing to do with it.
You're not stoked on walking towards discomfort.
Even skating, you know, like I'll go for a rip, and I'm like, yep, take it easy though, bro. You know, like don't you even think about trying to get a little out of pocket? Because I was like, for me, like either because of work or activities that I enjoy, at least 4 or 5 days a week, I would get worked up into a lather of sweat. You know, going to the gym, skating, working, or like just even doing whatever job I was.
Yep.
Now, like, it almost never happens, you know, because I'm not actively out pursuing that. And a lot of times I'm trying to angle away from those things that would start to fucking, like, really make me work. Because I'm like, I just don't want to fucking deal with struggle and strain right now. But now I'm like, well, I started putting some things in perspective. And, like, you know, this thing's been just over 2 years, and that thing's been 2 years, and this other thing's been 2 years. And I'm like, 2 years is long enough to feel sorry for your fucking self and let yourself be a pile of shit in your own eyes. Exactly. And I mean, and nobody else's opinion is anybody saying that to me. But I mean, when I analyze what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, I'm not positive about it. You know, like I was even telling her, I'm like, you know, I'm doing stand up. I'm in the band. I got the club, you know, for as much as we're doing that, and I do this, and like, so I think to many other people's standards, it's like, oh, you got lots of stuff on the go. But like, if you asked me, I'd be like, I nothing going on.
Yeah, nothing.
And then as soon as I start listing it, hey, and then I'm like, well,
life.
I guess I'm doing that, and I'm started doing this. But I mean, I'm also not 100% fucking just going hard at anything, you know? Like,
do you need to?
Well, that's the balance too, because I'm like, I feel like I don't need to for a lot of things. I don't have to do everything. Like, it's going to be like, well, you're going to make a career out of this. You should try and do it like that. Like, take it that seriously that tomorrow you're going to start doing it. But that's a long ways away from where I am now of the, oh, that's going to inconvenience me even slightly. Fuck it. I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to wait, and maybe I won't have to do it or push it off.
I think if anybody, look at it like an injury, right? Like if anybody's injured, they're going to need rest to recuperate from the injury.
Yeah, man.
But the problem is, and you see it a ton, especially if you get into like the 12-step programs and shit like that, people that become addicted to painkillers because that injury period got lingered out, and then they were no longer injured or they weren't recuperating, but they got used to whatever they were using to I guess, medicate themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing without using pain medication, but
it's just whatever it is.
All the other things, partying, food, sleeping all fucking day, whatever it is that makes me feel good at the time. Staying in bed with my dogs is almost my favorite thing in the entire world right now. And I'm like, and people are like, hey, you want to go ride motorcycles? You want to go and hang out? And I'm just like, I don't think so. I start picturing what that's going to be like. I'm like, yeah, but that's 3 hours. I could have just been like warm and cozy too, right? Yep. You know, like, but you miss out on make all the things that make life interesting and give a person fucking joy, like all those interactions with people that bring me up. You know what I mean? I don't get that staying at home and just hiding.
I think vital accomplishment is largely found out of conquering challenge.
That's it. You know, if you can't be uncomfortable, you'll never get a reward.
Do you ever see I forget what Big Mouth, the cartoon Big Mouth?
Watched a bit of it. Yeah,
raunchy, but
but to say the least. Yeah.
Eventually, one of the girls, she aside from the hormone monster, along comes the depression monster, and the depression is this like big, cuddly, seductive, sleepy cat. And
that sounds correct.
Go to sleep, baby. Go to sleep. You just relax. You don't worry. I got you. And
hypothermia.
And curls up around her and just like pulls her into bed. She's like, yeah, this is where I need to be. And that's just it. Depression is a seductive mistress, right? Because it's comfortable to do nothing. It's comfortable to stay at home. It's comfortable to eat whatever you want. And it's uncomfortable to do those things that you probably should. In the back of your mind, you know what you should be doing. But then John Joseph in the PMA called it the enemy mind. And the enemy mind is what's like, you don't need to do that. You could do it tomorrow. And that's that internal fight all the time, whether you're going to fight the enemy mind or just let it be victorious, right?
Well, see, and I usually wait until like I'm in excruciating pain or I'm so broke I have to fight it or whatever it is. Like I wait till it's like, oh, this feels like a bottom again.
One of them rock bottoms.
Do it, you know what I mean? And then I didn't have any experience like that, but I did have a shitty work week last week. Just wasn't a good wasn't a good week for me. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is like the correction time thing. Maybe this is like you got to do something different than what you have been doing. What you are normally doing does work, but it's not right now. So now I got to fucking be uncomfortable and get out of my zone of things that I like to do when I go out to work and start fucking adjusting accordingly. And I know I'll see the reward from it almost instantly. Like the first day I go back and I start doing the shit that I know I should be doing every day when I'm out there just not doing it. I'm being very vague about this, I guess, if you don't know what I do for work, but like, like selling food and shit, right? Like I'll just drive past houses that I know I should be stopping, customers that I already have. I'm just like, I don't feel like stopping there today. And well, and what's the big deal? And now it's like, no, you've had a shitty week now. You got to fucking fix that. Quit that attitude.
Me and my partner, we've had a couple rough weeks. She's been dealing with some emotional triggers, and it kind of came to a head last night where we had to have a serious sit down where I'm like, okay, so I don't think we're having relationship issues because I'm the same guy doing the same shit as I have been for the last 7 years. But what has happened is you've had a whole bunch of triggers in the last 3 weeks, and I'll come home from work and you haven't gone out. You stop going to the gym. You just hang out with the dogs. Yeah, that doesn't sound
like her.
Well, right?
She's very fucking busy.
So when I come home and she's like pouting, borderline crying, and then tells me it's because you don't listen to me enough. And I'm like, wait a second. It's not because of me. It's the whatever else happened in the last few weeks that triggered you and that you haven't really looked at, but it's easy to project it onto this right now. So that needs to be analyzed. So we had a good conversation last night, and she's come up with a new program. Like she was up at 8 in the morning, got ready, went to the gym first thing in the morning, went to the stores, got the things that she needed for her new business plans. And so even just doing that once gives you the motivation saying, hey, I did it once and I can do it.
You got to get into that dark space to crawl back out. To go fucking like, okay, what do I got? Because if everything's going smoothly, that plain sailing weather, if everything's going well, why do you need to upheave things? Why should you really adjust anything more than what's comfortable? Because it's all kind of working.
Well, and that's the thing, or you think it is. Like some people...
Oh, yeah, exactly. From my perspective, it was still working when it's like, no, you're shooting yourself in the foot every fucking day by not doing these things and doing these things.
See, there's some people, and I think you mentioned it in the last podcast, you mentioned that some people just stay super busy so they don't have to center down and look at their ugly, you know, reality. Yeah. And then there's other people that kind of get lost in a spiral of that ugly reality and they get sucked into it. That stops
I'm a spiraler.
Them.
That's
yeah,
me.
that stops them from going.
I won't start hoarding, but yeah, I'll disappear. Yeah,
and
or my personality will, at least. You know, even if I'm physically there, I'm still not engaging and not being me.
You're distanced. You're distanced. Man. Yeah, I don't know. Self-work's a tough one, and
it sucks.
Well, it can,
but it's very rewarding. Right?
It's important.
It's something no one else can give you. No one else. There's no explanations of anybody else's fucking experiences that can give you the more clarity than doing the work yourself. But it's
self-work could be ugly. It involves a lot of gross self-acceptance, like acceptance of the things you don't want to accept about yourself.
Yep.
Like me, there's certain elements of me being a real fucking bully and doing inventory of how the impression I gave to people over the last 20 years. Like I had another tattoo client that came in and said, "You scared the shit out of me, Matt." And I'm like, "Me?" Yeah, like, right? I'm 5 foot fuck all, you know, 5'7", I guess. And, you know, I'm not that scary. I'm just me, you know. She's like, "You don't see you from an outside point of view." And I'm like, holy fuck. So I have to do analyzation.
Well, yeah, like Rottweilers are only about this big.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like
I guess.
They're not a cow. You know what I mean? Physically, they're not intimidating. Yeah. Well, sorry, that kind of reminds me. I don't know if I've ever told the little clip of a story about this on here before. But anyways, I was reading, I think it was Pat Miletich's book. And Pat Miletich was a MMA coach, an MMA like pioneer as well, and was coaching guys like Matt Hughes and Jens Pulver and fucking Tim Sylvia, who was heavyweight champ for a while. And that's what this story is about. So Pulver and Hughes and those guys were already in the gym, and Sylvia came along later. And wasn't in nearly the cardiovascular shape and shit that all the other guys were, but he's a monster human being. He's 6'7", probably walks around 300 fucking pounds, like probably, you know, because he was a huge dude. And Jens Pulver, who was lightweight champ for a while and just an absolute fucking killer at 145 pounds and 5'4", probably walked around maybe 150, 160, something like that. But still, only I think he's 5'3" or 5'4". But he was the big dog in the gym because he'd been there a long time and he'd already been fighting professionally for a long time. So he'd dog Sylvia all the time. Like fucking ride his ass. He'd be Tim would be doubled over, like fucking throwing up, and he'd be like, "Oh, you bitch," you know, like giving him shit. "You don't belong here," all this kind of stuff. Hey, and Tim would leave these fucking gym sessions crying. And finally, their coach Pat Militich pulled him aside one day, and Tim is like, "What the fuck, man?" He's like, "Why do you keep letting him get to you like this?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. He just gets to me." And he's like, "But you're a fucking giant, man. You're more than literally a foot taller and 100 pounds bigger than him." And he's like, "Well, he always just seemed bigger to me." You know, and it's like, because it's like his personality and who he was and how much of a bully he was. And a lot of times when he was bullying him, he's on his knees or doubled over because he's throwing up because he can't do the fucking workouts they're doing. "Well, you seem bigger than me." And I was like, what the fuck? You're a literal giant. And this guy might pass as a hobbit in most circumstances. And you're just like, bully me around a bit.
In a few ways, that's part of my issues with the MMA community. Just that entire vibe of alpha male.
That's an exclusive to that gym almost, though. Or some of those type of gyms. Like, they're like, those guys were killers. Like, they weren't not, you couldn't come in off the street and go to that gym. You know what I mean? And that was part of their thing, is they were building killers. And so that's why they were ruthless. I mean, Ken Shamrock ran a similar program with the Lions Den. Fucking even John Danaher with his Danaher Death Squad, jiu-jitsu guys. Like,
exactly.
It's not for casuals.
Well, and that's just it. It's an entire energy of MMA.
They're the militant level of MMA. You know what I mean?
And you do see it blending into, very seldom do you. Dave's gym was a little different because it was like so kind of like they wore cartoons. He had yellow rash guard with kittens on it. So that's a whole other vibe, which is why I could actually train.
I can't even describe the soundtrack in that gym.
Yeah, it was pretty strange.
It's not what you would picture out of an MMA
So
gym.
yeah, his gym was a little different, but there was just something about that MMA vibe, the alpha male tough guy, you know, I'm bigger than you. And it's funny because when you went to that one fight and you go to those events, especially the after events, and you see all the posturing American fighter shirts and like it's just like alpha bro environment, and I'm like, you know what, this is not the martial arts I grew up with.
This is not for me.
You know, I learned from little Filipino men and little Chinese men that would look like grandpas, you know, and they were like very tiny and respectful and just wanted to be left alone, you know, and they weren't trying to be the biggest, toughest, meanest white boy in the room or whatever boy in the room, right?
Whatever shade of boy.
Yeah. But out here, it's also white boy, tough guy, you know, rig kind of
almost
mentality.
Exclusively. But whole MMA gyms,
So yeah, I think I had to do inventory on my effect on other people and my behavior on other people, and try and heal myself with compassion a little bit, you know, try and not do that stuff, but not beat myself up, because that's one of my other things that I do, is beating myself up, beating other people up emotionally or verbally, and rarely physically, but not doing it to myself as well. And that's a tough one. I saw this meme recently, and it was intergenerational healing is the answer to intergenerational trauma, and any healing is the answer to trauma. So you have an injury, you need to heal it. And the problem is I know I do, and I guess by your story you might too, is not having the right set of coping mechanisms to heal that. So I want to disappear into my room and not get out of bed, or me, I'm just going to give her, and not slow down enough to look at that stuff, right? But when I do, I need to examine the toxic shit that I'm doing that continues to hurt me, right? My own behavior as a result of whatever I went through.
Yep.
And then realize that I'm doing that because of what I went through, and stop doing it. And stop stop doing the things that are hurting me with compassion. That's the key thing. Because like my mind, I'm like, okay, I can stop it. I'm shutting it down right fucking now. Don't fuck around. You do anything wrong, you fail. Whose voice is that coming out of my brain, right? Is this my voice?
How do I talk to myself?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Where did that get programmed in?
Yeah.
And so I basically have to reevaluate and come up with a new pattern, a healthier pattern, in order to speak to myself. And one of them is positive affirmations versus I'm a degenerate piece of shit, or, you know, you're fucking weak and all of that stuff. No, you could do better. I know it's in you.
Well, and I find for myself, I have to learn how to not get so gung-ho about the change that I do it dramatically. It's a gradual thing. Like, I can't go from being like, oh, I'm a fucking piece of shit, to like, you know what? I'm done drinking and I'm done partying, and tomorrow I'm also starting to run and I'm getting a fucking gym thing and I'm doing it all on the same day. You know, like, it's
one thing at a
that's
time.
because I was even just picturing it like me getting out of bed and you slowing down. Both of those solutions are meditation. You know what I mean? That picks me up just a little bit, so I get up and actually go and do something, and that brings you back down and centers you, right? So like that's a small step. That's not only am I getting out of bed, I'm gonna go out and do this other fucking thing in the world that I know that I 6 months from now, that's where I want to be. I want to be doing that, but I can't just jump to it. It's got to be gradual.
Well, and first
for me
off,
to make it stick. Sorry,
recognizing that ideal situation and coming up with a roadmap to get there, I think, is extremely valuable. And having steps to get there, like. Yeah, you want to stop partying, and you want to get out more, and you want to start being able to run or bike or go to the gym or any of that stuff. Well, pick one and just start doing that.
Yep.
And then once that's kind of a habit, get on to the next one and get on to the next one, as opposed to trying to do it all in one fell swoop. And it's funny because, I don't know, I stopped drinking or I stopped doing drugs, and I realized, well, I still had a drinking problem. And I stopped drinking, and I realized I had a food problem, which I still struggle with, you know. And so I started training more and exercising more and doing martial arts. And I realized that I had an anger problem, and I had, aggression issues. So I kind of dial back the martial arts stuff, and I start exercising more, and I'm realizing that I still have issues surrounding sexual behavior, like being inundated with porn and stuff most of the time growing up, and the attitudes that was giving me. So every time I think that I'm like, okay, phew, I got sober. Hey, wait, but here's this other ugly thing that you didn't want to look at, and here's the other ugly thing.
And to me, that almost sounds like you're constantly trying to get control of something. Either the addicting thing is helping you control yourself, or you're like, well, now I have to control the addiction of whatever it is. And I kind of resonate with that a little bit, because I feel a lot of times when I get anxious and shit, it is a lack of feeling like I'm in control of the situation.
Oh, frustration,
and then that slides right back to even childhood, where I'm just like, I don't feel like I have a set of real permanence if I don't feel like we're going to be in the same house all the time.
Oh, that's fair.
And then I don't feel like I have control over that. And then lots of other things.
What else do you not have control over?
That's what it kind of gets to be, right? And so then when that happens to me now as an adult, I right away like, if I don't have money to cover the car repairs or whatever, I'm just back to like, I have no control. I have no power in this situation.
Gonna bug out.
I'm like a little kid, Yeah. And so it's the shit that I got to see and like recognize, and then go like, no, you're the only one that has control over this. Actually, it turns out, well, there's nothing is out of your control. It's just another thing I got to fucking deal with.
Well, when things get hot in relationships and in conversations, one of the first things I realize is that again, the lack of control. is met immediately with frustration. And like, I'm losing control, I'm getting frustrated, and as soon as I'm frustrated, the widest neural pathway available is anger and fury.
Where's Old Faithful?
Old Faithful,
Come
that's
on,
just
boy.
it. Yeah, you don't. And like,
I need an emotion right fucking now. Which one is it?
and when I jump in that river, it's really fucking hard to change gears and start going against the stream, because that's that stream that's been programmed into me for the better part of 40 years, where it's time to bug out now.
Yeah.
It's time to raise your voice. It's time to start stomping. And last night when we were in a pretty heated discussion, I'm like trying to dial it back. I'm trying to go from like a heightened level down to a normal conversation level. And I'm being told by my partner, who I love incredibly, you have work to do. And I'm like, I haven't tipped over a single table in this house. I haven't thrown anything against anything. I haven't bugged out. I'm talking loud and I'm trying to get it under, but you can't expect me when I'm going 60 kilometers an hour to put it in reverse. Yeah. She's like, you need to tell me you love me and compassion right now. And I'm like, I'm trying my best to get it under control. And yeah, but that's just me. And that's one of those things that I need to work on.
It's not just you, actually. There's lots of people like that, man.
It's not just you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I feel all of that. It's the same fucking thing where I'm like, I think I'm doing my best. And everybody else is like, holy fuck, you're going to kill everyone in the room, aren't you? And
but I'm not.
What are you talking about? They're like, but you haven't said anything and you keep making that face. And I'm like, holy fuck. Quiet and a face is enough.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You know,
Tone.
But then
Tone?
but it's true though, because then it's like, because I get defensive because I feel like I'm doing all this work and I'm not being appreciated for it.
That's
You're not
exactly
appreciating
it.
all the things I'm not doing right now. But then it's like, well, yeah, okay, cool and all, but we still need you to do better, bud. And it's like, fine. And it's not a moving up the goalpost. It's just you got to constantly evaluate that shit. Even talking earlier about trying to picture how I want my next 6 months to go, I have to reevaluate it every day. For me, to stay on track, to keep going, okay, well, I am making progress with this, or I'm not, or whatever it is, or maybe I can integrate something else, and then it evolves the fucking plan.
So that's part of it, right? Like the moving of the goalposts, where the person I am now doing any self-work is heads and shoulders above where I was 15, 20 years ago, who like, fuck it, I'm going to use people to get where I want to be, you know, or what I want, right? And or I'm going to use drugs, or I'm going to just do whatever the fuck I want.
Sandwiches, whatever
I'm using, right? and now I'm doing my best not to do that. And so I feel the moving goalposts, especially from people that have only known me 3 years or 4 years, 5 years, you don't know how much work I've done. And you need to really like take a huge step the fuck back, because, you know, but I use, because I use profanity when I get a little, like when it's starting to go, or my voice raises, that is so much better than it used to be. It is like, and you don't even understand. So I'm going to be proud of that. And I'm going to go and I'm going to separate myself from the situation so it doesn't escalate. I'm going to cool down and come back calm instead of staying here. And that, even in that, it's not that I'm just like running back and you know what fucking else, and then I'm going to go back and you know what else. I'm not doing that.
Go back and make a game plan, get the chalkboard out, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Board, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to be a better human being. And that moving goalposts gets really frustrating for me. And well, you know, and it's funny because you see it in larger society where people are like toxic this and toxic that. And I'm like, man, do you see the people that are really out here doing the work to become better people?
I feel like legitimately at the time that the movie White Chicks came out, people were even like, this is kind of positive, you know, like it's like flipping blackface, you know, where people are like, now, what the fuck was that movie exactly? How transphobic is that shit? What the fuck? You know, like,
really? Is that what the thing is?
I'm sure. Maybe I'm making something up, but I'm just saying, like, just as an example, I could see that being the narrative, right? And and again, and that was, you know, at the time, it could even be something that's like touted, hey, we're doing it right, and you're like, yeah, but you know, the near future, you're still gonna look backwards.
See, I want to do the clapback shit so much when I hear that kind of like activism and like performative activism, like doing it for the hashtag, doing it for the online clout, as opposed to really wanting a dialogue and to engage. Know what any of
that is even. Like, what's the value in it? Like, do you get paid?
No,
I guess if you get advertisers, right? And if you got enough likes and clicks and shit with your clout,
you get to let your community know that you believe in the right politically progressive things, even if they're half thought out, you know. and I wanted to, like, my girlfriend's like, Pat, don't, and I'm like, well, then I'm going to talk about it on the podcast, and I'm like, she's like, I don't know if you should.
You can't stop me, right? There.
And I'm like, I want to make a shirt that says colonialism, you're welcome, right? Which
no wrong way to misinterpret that.
Right. And, you know, and I'm a shit disturber, but yeah. And so basically, yeah, you're welcome for the infrastructure that we can take for granted. You're welcome for indoor plumbing. You're welcome for electricity. You're welcome for cars and your phones and the institutions that you can use to be educated enough to bitch about the system. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that these systems don't need to be revised to include more people.
And I also picture the person that you're picturing having these set of complaints is definitely upper middle class, that already had a comfortable life and have these opinions on these things. Because even still with that, like the colonialism thing, when you were like, you were running water, and I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of northern communities. That's not the case. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
There's still definitely some negative aspects to that. But I can see the people screaming very loudly about that have no connectivity to it also.
No.
It's this
upper middle class white girls with all the right fucking opinions.
Trying to find a victimhood of some sort to attach yourself to so you can be part of that group.
So it's funny. I got a good buddy, and he was going to the local Indian Federation college, and he was going to get his addictions counseling. So he was there because his new drive in life is to help people overcome addictions. But because it's an indigenous college, there's a huge emphasis put on reconciliation, truth reconciliation, because it is Truth and Reconciliation Day today, I think. And I think so, the 30th. I think it's the 30th of September. Is it? I don't know.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, it's coming up. Oh, no, in a few days, it's going to be the Truth and Reconciliation Day. It used to be Orange Shirt Day, but they made it a little more formal, which is hugely important. It is. We need to understand what happened to the Indigenous people in Canada, how they had their culture stripped from them, the atrocities that happened to them as a people, as individuals through the residential schools, the 60s scoop, the Indian Act, shutting down the potlatches, shutting down powwows. Okay, so I'm coming from a position where I know this stuff, and he didn't know this stuff. But he went to this college, and he's like, so I want to learn addictions counseling. I want to help people. I don't want to be treated like I'm a Klan member. Because every class he went to, and at first I kind of debated with him. I'm like, but man, you need to know this stuff. But then he sat me down and he started telling me some of the stuff that was being put on the settlers in Canada. And he's like, man, I didn't do that. And these kids, these people are leaving. These people are leaving the class and they're glaring at me like I'm the guy who did the residential schools. And he ended up quitting the entire program. He's like, I can't, I'm going to go to Sask Polytech instead of this college. And I'm like, I kind of want to go to that college. But then there's the other element where it's like, colonialism, you're welcome for the parts you're taking for granted.
And which is what I find interesting about that. And again, I don't know his story or how the whole thing went or whatever, but now, was that something he perceived? Like, did he perceive it as that, or was that actually what was there? Like, was that a hit dog barks? When you're like, I'm not attached to that. And it's like, yeah, but nobody said you, Bill, personally were. We're talking about, and you can argue it's your ancestors so that it's your bloodline, so that it's sort of you, I guess. But realistically, I don't know anybody that's like in the real world pointing at people now being like, Dusty Deal, you're accountable for this. Russ, you're accountable. Pat, you're accountable. And in the ways that they mean, where it's like, no, like you're literally accountable for this. It's different to be accountable for accepting it and acknowledging it and Truth and Reconciliation Days and being aware of the culture and all those things. We should kind of be responsible for doing those things, But as far as like being responsible for all the ailments of it, of course we're not. You know what I mean? But we can do our part to help when we see injustices
100%.
Now. Try, right? But
I
it's
agree.
like it's because so many people take stuff like that personally where they feel like it's like, you said that about me, and it's like, no, it's about the system. And it's like, yeah, but the system looks like me, and you're like, yeah, okay, but like
okay, now
the
keep
same
this
thing.
in mind. Now impressionable, like young people won't say it's the larger system. They, after going through these indoctrinating ideas, well, no, that's not necessarily indoctrination, but in his opinion, there was an element of indoctrination that truth is truth. What does reconciliation look like? So in his mind, there was a level of racist indoctrination that was happening that accompanied this truth and reconciliation education, where impressionable young people in those courses will come out with racist attitudes that are approved by the curriculum, just like in the past, coming out of a white colonial education, the approved curriculum, and you come out with a racist attitude, those savages, those oppressors.
Sure. So, okay, so that gets to be the core of it then, right? Is that an intentional withholding of information so that somebody's view is only formed to see that? Or are they coming out looking at this going, well, no, that looks like racism, because they're educated on it now, And I don't agree with continuing to say, well, it's you, because that's just perpetuating all that same bullshit, right? But
Shifting
I'd have to learn more about it, I guess.
Shifting goalposts is, go back to that. The shifting goalposts of definitions of what is racism. The shifting goalposts of what the definition of transphobia is.
Sure.
Right? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
It ends up ceasing and stifling dialogue and conversation because so many people are so into, that's obviously racist. Because, or you're coming from a colonial background, so I don't have to listen to your opinion. Sure. That's called racism.
Well, exactly. If they keep thinking it through, eventually they'll get there, right? And I think it's just even interesting because it's like we're talking about like like we're qualified, the evolution of language around racism and shit, where even you just look at the evolution of racial equality in North America in the last like 50, 60 years, like we're talking like, okay, you can drink into the same water fountain. We still can't use the pool yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, no, reevaluate that. Got to reevaluate that. Still can't use, okay, now we can use the pool. Okay, but you can't work in the same building though. Okay, got to reevaluate that, right? Well, it's that daily meditation, right? It's that constant, I know where I want to be, and every time I go a little bit closer, I got to figure out, is this next step still what I thought it was, or I don't know, that's how it looked before, now I got to go this way.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of narrative that is being written from a vantage point of education, from a vantage point of cultural privilege. Anybody that can afford to go to any college is a privileged individual to a large degree. You know, it don't matter what gender
compared to most of the population, honestly,
to poor fucking
40% of us for sure can't fucking ever
dudes,
do it.
Okay,
at least, I guess.
So you at least have the privilege that you can get a secondary higher education and you can use these languages and you understand these principles and you can, come down and educate a plebeian mass, right? Okay. All right, cool. So you got that information. Now, holding, let's say, somebody who is from 120 years ago to the moral ethical standards of what is expected today is largely ridiculous. I get it. Like, obviously, genocidal maniacs, the Mussolinis, the Hitlers, the Stalins in the world don't deserve statues. John A. MacDonald, I don't think was a Hitler or a Stalin. And at the time that John A. MacDonald wanted to build the CNP, the Canadian National, or CNR, whatever, railway, the railway, Pacific Railway across Canada, his contemporaries said, just kill them. Yeah. And he's like, no, we need treaties. Yeah. We need to work with these people. Like, it's their country. Well, no, just kill them. The U.S. killed them. In Europe, we kill them. Yeah. Just kill them. And so he was a progressive at the time. Yeah. But now, that racist colonial oppressor and the genocide.
Well, and that's what's crazy, right? Is like it wasn't as severe as others may have wanted at the time, but there still would have been things that would have contributed to, not the extinction of, but the
erasure of a culture.
Yes, exactly.
And I get that. I get that.
So it's a fine fucking tune thing because at the time, he would have been considered a progressive, right? That's someone forward thinking.
Let's say 50. No, let's go 100. 120 years from now, the owner of Maple Leaf Foods, somebody looks back and says that genocidal slaughterhouse owner. How could he do that to a living being? Right. And you took part in that industry. Yeah. You were complicit.
Well, for anybody who doesn't know, that's like a pig processing
plant. It's a pig
in
processing, or sausages and stuff. You were complacent in genocide. Yeah. How could you do that? Yeah. Well, it wasn't immoral when I was living there. Yeah. Anybody who's part of that family, don't you know that you were part of that atrocity? Yeah. Well, as morals shift, you can't really hold the people like back in the day, to the same standard of morality that you would today.
Here's the thing, though. Like, a lot of that, though, is just analysis. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many people are trying to, like, hold those families financially responsible now to repay that. It's just kind of like being like, because I do feel like, again, lots of history is whitewashed. So I think on their side, they're trying to go, well, no, this is the other side of that perspective. This is what they're showing.
Valid.
And it's adding balance to it. And it doesn't erase that. But that, again, this is the problem with everything that's new. It's like people go, no, tear them the fuck down. And then you're like, just take 9 deep breaths and think about it for a second. Why don't we teach the whole history so when somebody sees it, go, yeah, this is a man who did these things for the country, blah, blah, blah. These were his flaws in policy as well, or personally, or whatever the fuck else you think needs to be told, Mm-hmm. And I do get the argument of, like, if it's what's his name? Arthur Pike, I think it was one of the guys who started the KKK, and he was like a Confederate general, shit like that. Like, that's maybe not a person that you need to still have a statue up in public public of.
Yeah.
But here's my thing on that. This is still history. I think you put that shit in a fucking museum then, and you still educate people. And people can't go there and have a picnic by it and have to sit in the shadow of someone who actively forced people to fucking be slaves. But if you spend an afternoon with your grade 9 class learning about it, and I think that's the point. I think that's why even the conversation about like critical race theory and shit like that is happening right now, because it's the point ultimately is to have people be educated on as much of it as you possibly can realistically.
Okay.
When there has, because like even now, like we were talking about, you know, these colonial mindsets and whatever, like people that are trying to rewrite that kind of shit, well, they were still educated in that though. You know, many of these people, you go back 20, 30 years, that's still, it's only transitioned recently.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is another element, like critical race theory and all of that, where I'm not new to it. You know, I remember in 1993 when the LA riots were going on, speaking against LAPD police brutality against black people in 1993 at a rally in Saskatoon. I remember saying during that speech, right now as I'm speaking, LA is on fire because of police brutality beating up a black man, Rodney King.
Yeah.
And so that was 1993.
Yeah.
Well, however many years ago that was. Welcome to the party internet.
Yeah.
You know, when you are just realizing about this and you're screaming and you're waving the banner I did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had 30 years of analyzing the nuances of the situation.
You think that's rough though? Imagine being a hippie.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey, when you started in the 60s and 70s being like, motherfucker, I told you the planet's burning. I told you California's going to burn down, hey? But that's it. Well, and again, but you weren't always following the mainstream narrative of shit. And you were always looking at the fringe. You were trying to see, even with music, because again, music was, I'm assuming, the foot that you had into even LA, because you'd understand the bands and the cultures from that would give you a connection to it. That's when you're looking for that shit, that's where you find it. Many people don't turn off the radio.
See, and that's exactly what I've been talking about lately, where the difference between punk rock and the pop music that indoctrinates, demoralizes, and pushes like a superficial agenda, a very surface level agenda. It's like happy-go-lucky, I love boys, go to the club,
pop.
you know.
It's sugary, it's
exactly.
fun, it's bubbly, it's
sugar coated, mindless garbage. If you're interested,
I'm gonna have another drink of my energy drink.
Yes, right. Well, go listen to what is it? Stars and Stripes of Corruption by Dead Kennedys, or Frankenchrist, or Give Me Convenience, Give Me Death, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Jello Biafra was singing about this shit in the 80s, and he was so on point back then that a lot of people just like, this guy's a whack job. He's a whack job. He's not making any sense.
That's too crazy. They can't all be racist.
And now, and only now, it's kind of interesting watching in 2021 the emergence of a culture of previously indoctrinated mainstream fucks that suddenly are introduced to theories like critical or like police brutality, ACAB, the critical race theory, LGBTQ rights. When in the underground, this has just been fucking life for the last however long. We've all known that cops are dicks. Yeah. We've all known gay, lesbian, trans, cross-dressing people. We're not new to it.
Yeah. Well, because in that, it's not just the music too. It's also the clubs that you go to, a lot of times are shared by marginalized groups. Mm-hmm. The same place you go to a punk show could have a drag show the night before.
Or a hip-hop show.
Exactly. And you could have crossover crowds because people just hang out. So you're going to see, but again, I don't know that it was those people personally never seeking out this thing, like knowing it's out there and go, I don't ever want to learn about it, right? But if it's just they've never had the opportunity because they were never drawn to the things that drew us, that those worlds were connected to. Mm. Right. So it's like, I totally understand they're late to the dance, and it's funny to see people getting upset about stuff, again, that you were upset about 20, 30 fucking years ago. But it's like, well, when do they get upset? Like when should they have learned
Okay,
that,
so I guess my major issue, or one of my major issues, is as an ally, when I keep being told that I'm one of the oppressors. People just started
doing this 3 years ago.
Yeah. Like, welcome to the party. Welcome to the party.
On you. Yeah.
And
but again, those are short-sighted, closed-minded people a lot of times that think that I'm very open because I'm part of this movement or this group.
New movement.
But it's like, give yourself a minute and some reflection, and you'll start seeing how closed-minded you are about your shit too.
But the problem is with social media. And with the power that's available with these new technologies,
and it's encouraged, right?
It is encouraged, and
if you're speaking up for a victim of some sort, you better speak loud and proud. And it doesn't matter if you're totally right or not. Well, get out there and defend them. Be a defender.
Okay, so I share some very interesting, challenging content on one of my social media accounts, and one of them recently was African American preacher who was saying, if you care about Black Lives Matter, you better stop the gangs in your neighborhood. You better stop dads from leaving their wives. You better not be knocking up 3 girls outside your marriage. If you care about Black Lives Matter, you better hold yourself accountable. And he just like tearing a strip off of his community.
Yeah.
Well, that needs to happen, because how is it that, you know, Black Lives Matter, yes, it shouldn't just be a hashtag. It should really, same thing with if you're pro-life, be pro-life. Be anti-war. Be anti-capital punishment. Don't just be,
it was pretty selective, and then they attach their identity to it, right? And then it's all identity politics instead of like, what do the fucking words mean, man? It's pro-life.
Do you care about the Black community? Have you listened to Black artists? Do you listen to Black preachers? Have you ever listened to Elijah Muhammad from the Nation of Islam's opinions on what the Black community needs to do? No? Then do you really give a shit? Do you have conversations with your Black friends? Do you have Black friends? You know, because that's Black Lives Matter. It's not just fucking cops.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's an entire community trying to do better. Who are like the thoughtful hip hop artists you listen to? Like Brother Ali, Immortal Technique, you know, was it Mike? No. Meek Mill, or forget it. Anyways, which I only listen to a few hip hop artists that are pretty on point. Psycho Realm, Slick Jack, and all those guys. But what involvement are you having in the community other than putting a fucking hashtag on your social media and calling out people for being racist when they aren't?
Yeah.
You know, and being eager to find villains under every rock.
Well, and I think all different types of communities kind of have that too when they see activism and they're like, you know, like, okay, cool. I'm glad you guys are getting excited about this. And we should also fix these other fucking things in our community that are our responsibility and that we can't expect other people to come in and fix for us.
Well, yeah, accountability.
And that's just that's a good example, right, of that. But I can picture it another for sure.
See, accountability is huge.
Thing on my finger.
You all right?
It's all good. I got like a weird thing on my knuckle.
It's a needle if you want.
Maybe.
So yeah, healing that trauma and healing those toxic coping mechanisms. So I look at this analogy of or analogous thinking where pain, consequence of pain, toxic coping mechanism not only happens to the individual that's been injured and has to medicate their pain and does stupid shit in order to alleviate that pain, it also happens to cultures and people, like on a large scale, right? So if a people are hurt and injured and beaten, raped, whatever, and they're traumatized, they're going to have all kinds of toxic coping mechanisms in the attempt to heal that pain. And those toxic coping mechanisms, you have to do the same thing that an individual would do from their own PTSD. This is intergenerational trauma. You don't want to pass that down to your kids, right? So what do you do to break that chain? What do you do to break those behaviors, right? Do you just keep perpetrating the same shit and blame your oppressor or blame the person that beat you when you were a child? Or do you say, fuck it, I'm never going to get an apology. I'm never going to get an apology from that guy who beat the fuck out of me as a kid. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be better. I'm going to not beat the shit out of my kid. I'm going to make the choices to recognize the bad things I'm doing as a result of that and try to do better things from now on, which is why I give so much credit to anybody who's going to college for an addictions counseling program from any, you know, community that they are. Like, fucking A, you're a Native person and you're in your college in order to help your community, fucking A. And I do think more settler people of any background should probably be in the same classes and learn it and not take it as a personal attack.
Don't take it personally, folks. You know what I mean? Just understand that it existed.
At the same time,
what the fuck was I just talking about?
Don't make it personal.
No, true that.
Both sides, right?
When you're holding the system accountable, you know, like you don't have to single out Bob unless you've actually seen Bob do those things.
Well, and that's
unless you've seen actively Bob's writing those laws to keep that there's not enough voting booths in black communities. You know what I mean? Then by all means, hold Bob the fuck accountable.
Well, you know, I'm getting feedback from people because of the podcast that think I'm like anti-trans, anti-immigrant, anti-Islam, and I'm like, no, I'm just having a conversation.
I think you have a harsh tone and you like to ask the hard questions.
Yes.
So I think people think that that's like an attack mode, and
of course.
It's like, no, that's just fucking Pat, man. Like, you guys never dealt with a badger before?
Yeah.
You know, and these are honest questions too, because I feel like you and I both, like, we don't, well, maybe we do here a bit, I guess. I'm not being aware of it, but I try not to in real life just ask rhetorical questions. Why are they like that? How come they do that? You know what I mean? Like, if I ask, I'm like, I want to legitimately know, you know, like, And I think that's the difference between that right there. Just going, well, I don't know why they're like that, and going like, no, I honestly don't understand, and I'd like to talk about it to try to figure it out. And I need to ask these questions because those are the components of it I don't understand because I'm not from that world, you know. And again, it's an attempt to, I guess, even just be closer because you have that understanding. You don't have that distance between you and these people that you don't necessarily understand because of how they live or what they do or whatever the fuck it is, right? But then that gets looked upon negatively because like, why are you asking those bigoted questions? And you're like, because I don't fucking know, man, because I don't know.
Well, I don't even think it's a bigoted question.
Yeah,
I don't think questions can be bigoted. I think statements can be bigoted.
But that's the same questions bigots ask without thinking about it.
See, and that right there, that is the problem.
Yeah.
When somebody with a good intention or a good heart asks the same question that a bigot would ask, and the bigot has an agenda, it's easy for you to say, well, that's because you're a bigot too.
Yeah.
And that's why I quit Facebook. Straight up. I asked about the trans MMA fighter.
Yeah, man, you can't just not know. Hey, you can't just ask, like, can I get somebody's honest opinion on this? You know?
Yeah,
but again,
well, what about
in
that?
those worlds, it's almost impossible with the fucking internet because everything's anonymous, and it's so rare you get honesty and realness out of anybody unless you know them personally. And even then, unless you're having a relatively personal conversation through a comments thing, it's all zingers. It's all whatever little
statements.
bits. It's all the little fun arguments you want to put out. It's not a real conversation.
Well, it's interesting because like my partner and I, we went out to the farm and we collected a whole bunch of white buffalo sage or white sage, and we're making smudges, right? And mostly because I'm going to run out through the winter, you know, but also just because I'm thinking we're going to do up some smudge bundles, and in exchange for a donation to Interval House or Child Crisis Nursery, you'll get a free smudge, you know, minimum donation. Here you go. We're not selling them because it's bad medicine to be selling your smudge, but we're giving it away to anybody who wants to donate to one of these charities, right? Yeah. So that's what we were doing, and I'm getting a lot of like, yeah, right on, man. You go do it. You keep it up from all kinds of like, you know, obviously, you know, settler people and indigenous people, because it's a nod to indigenous culture. You know, hey, if you're smudging, then you might as well know a little bit. You care a little bit about the indigenous, you know, history. Yeah. And it's funny, my one buddy, Randy, he's the prof at the U of S. And he's like, I'm like, man, is it okay if I smudge? Is it a big deal? Is that cultural appropriation? Like, no, you can't overdose from smudging. Smudge, you know? And I'm like, okay, thanks, man. That made me feel good in my heart.
Now, if you started a YouTube channel and tried to monetize that with Smudge With Me, Bro t-shirts,
you
know what I mean?
Sage against the machine.
Sage against the machine.
That's what my, exactly. But that's just it. Randy and I've sat with him for hours and hours having conversations, and they are sometimes challenging conversations, but he knows I care. And, you know, and I remember one time he came in and he's like, yeah, I'm at this school. They're putting me on all these, what are they called? This council for this and the committee for this and the council for this. He's like, I don't know if I signed up for that. I'm like, what, are you just like the token brown guy, the token red guy that they need? He's like, I think so. And everybody at the shop, their eyes got all wide, like, oh my God, I can't believe Pat said that.
I'm so sorry. Did he offend you?
Right?
Speaking for you, hey, like, we're so sorry. Pat can be rough sometimes.
Yeah. Well, they thought I said something very insensitive. I'm like, what, are you just the token guy that they're putting in? He's like, I think that might be but we're friends.
You know your crowd.
Right?
You know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
That's the other problem with this too, is a lot of times things are said for an audience. Not necessarily just, it's not a dog whistle to a specific group, but sometimes things are said for an audience. And then, because you see it with comedy lots. People say, you take shit out of context in stand-up, and they're going, well, that's a horrendous fucking thing to say. Why would you ever? And then you're like, well, no, but you don't know what the guy did earlier in the evening that was up before me, and it ties back to that. And of course, on its own, that's a terrible, just whatever the fuck the thing it is to say. You know what I mean? But like, well, it's like, this isn't of the same ilk, I don't think. But like, last stand-up thing, one of my first little gags was kind of like, I just want to say thank you to there was this guy you had a bit earlier about being a skinny fat guy, right? So I was like, I just want to say thank you to the skinny fat guy. I didn't know I was molested as a child, but after your explanation of that taste in my mouth, I totally get it. So really, I thank you. I now know what that tastes like. And you know, and you're like, oh, is he talking about being fucked as a child? And you're like, well, I guess, but like, it ties to a joke that I was making earlier, you know? Like, you shouldn't joke about child molestation, or shouldn't I? Because it kind of made everybody there laugh, because they knew what he was talking about. If it made you laugh,
I should joke about it.
That's the fucking point. That's the point with that shit. What is the intention of it? What's the audience? Is it to make them laugh. Okay, well, it didn't hit the right audience if you didn't laugh then.
Well-
and if it wasn't forced upon you, I don't really know what your argument is. You know what I mean? Like, that just joke wasn't, I didn't write a set for everybody at every table in the room. I wrote the shit that I thought would be funny, or if I see one table laughing at it, oh, I guess this is for them. You know, like...
Well, okay, if you're a comedian... It depends. It depends on your goal, because I've seen some comedians that I like a lot, and people aren't laughing. They sit in awkward, kind of insulted silence, and they don't know if it's appropriate to laugh.
Some of the funniest
And that's
Bill Burr gets motherfuckers sitting on their hands in the front row going like, I don't like that.
I don't know.
Who's funnier than him?
But that being said, like, if you had a transcript of some Chris Rock stand-up, and you just read it without the nuance, without the context, without the voice, without the physical action... Do you remember in 1993 when you said, fuck the kids? You know,
yeah, right?
Like, what? I am afraid of white young men. You know, I do not want to be in an elevator.
Kind of the beauty of art also is that you can't just transcribe it and have it have the same emotion. You can't transcribe Bohemian Rhapsody and have it have the same emotion as hearing Freddie Mercury sing it.
Okay, actually, Bohemian Rhapsody, there's some language in Bohemian Rhapsody in Islam which is really offensive, where it's Hezbollah. I don't know, is it Hezbollah or... There's one thing he's like, let me go, and the word that they're chanting out is in the name of God, right? Let me go, in the name of God, but it's a very sacred term in Islam, right? And once again, people are like, he probably shouldn't have been saying that. And can you back the fuck up? Can you back the fuck up and not be so eager to be offended by everything?
Well, and I can't imagine that the fundamentalists were his target audience once again.
No,
you know
but the
mean?
fact that he knew the term well enough to incorporate it as a cry out, man, Bohemian Rhapsody. Oh, okay, so here we are.
You want to get on a tangent?
Fuck, man, like that song is an epic fucking song. I'm pretty sure my interpretation is a guy who fucking murders somebody and he has to fight for his soul to not go to hell. And he's literally crying out, please let me go, you know, please, I killed a man, but, you know, please don't make me...
Isn't the line, Beelzebub has a devil set aside for me?
Yeah, and he's like, in the name of God, let me go, let me go, let me go.
Hey, look at the things we know about.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody is a phenomenal song if you actually really look at it. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? And again, the transcription of it is not the same. Even somebody else just trying their best to sing it is not the same. Like...
And I think that goes back to art. Let's go comedy, music, whatever. Art with substance as opposed to superficial consumerist bullshit. And mainstream culture largely is superficial consumerist bullshit. While there was pop music, you know, David Bowie, right? That actually had stuff to say. That once upon a time, pop music had stuff to say. Maybe it wasn't pop, but I think over the last maybe 20 years, maybe 30.
Well, just in popular music in general, like revolution songs, you know, like in the 60s and 70s. That's what was on the radio. You know what I mean? Like people were talking about the Vietnam or whatever the fuck was going on in popular music.
Yes.
You definitely don't see that as much.
But then, like, the commodification of art. Yeah. The commodification of comedy, the commodification of art. So real comedy gets replaced by things like Legally Blonde. Right, you know, stuff that could actually be having some...
catchphrases. People in stadiums just cheer. Yeah, pop.
Yeah, exactly. It's
community
sitcoms.
throwback. We're watching a little bit of that.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So it ends up just being commercialized bullshit. And I think the music industry, it has a large portion of that. Like, how can we make money? What's going to sell? What's going to make people happy? What's got a beat to it? You know, Chris Rock, he's like, it doesn't matter. They're going to dance to it either way. It doesn't matter. It can be the most raunchy lyrics in the world. Fuck her in the eye. Fuck her in the eye. And she's like, I love this song. Fuck me in the eye. Fuck me in the eye.
Was he predicting wet ass pussy?
Right? You know, and so when we go
banger.
Well, when we go to my child's, I think it was grade 5 school dance, and they're playing Anaconda by Nicki Minaj. What the fuck are you playing that for at an elementary school dance?
Get them all horned up.
What are you training these kids to do? What are you encouraging the young generation that has? Because there was kids singing every word to that song, and I'm like, I mentioned to my ex, I'm like, do you know what this song's about? And she's like, no. So I looked up the lyrics and was like, I let him hit it because she sells cocaine. And I'm like, yeah, you see that grade 7 girl dancing and singing it and they're twerking. And I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, which is in grade 9 in rehab.
Yeah, right? And
I heard a song with, and it made, that's not giving kids a lot of credit, but fuck me, kids are dumb. I did so much dumb shit as a fucking kid, man. Like, even just that, like, you get into those scenarios, and if you're programmed, like, you see with little, like, wannabe gangster kids, you get programmed by listening to this music, and then it gets to a point where it's like, I'd stab a motherfucker. You're like, well, this is normally in the song when they would stab a motherfucker, and I guess I'm there in real life. Stab, 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 stab.
I've been to hip-hop shows, I've been to punk shows, been to metal shows, been to raves, been to, major, like, I don't go to a lot of mainstream concerts, but, like, hip-hop shows are some of the most toxic environments I've ever been. And I've been to like black metal, like, you know, like goat head, blood, fire shows. You don't see guys getting their heads jumped on by a group of 6, 7 kids over a gold chain or looking at a girlfriend as you do with suburban kids trying to emulate urban hip hop mainstream content.
Yep.
And the hyper superficiality and violence that's promoted through that stuff really gets to me. What is it? I have it written down here. R. Kelly was just found guilty of racketeering in his sex trial. R. Kelly, everybody, I love you. You know, like R&B guy. He was accused of running a criminal enterprise in which his managers and aides helped the singer meet girls, abuse them, and then afterwards keep them obedient and quiet. They would cruise malls for like teeny bopper girls that are like, oh my God, you're R. Kelly. Come back to the hotel. He's going to do God knows what, no matter how young you are. And that's mainstream chill music, you know, like that's like, oh, this is like, he's a lover boy. No, he's a fucking scumbag.
Well,
he's a fucking
scumbag. And all that kind of shows you just how bullshit much of cancel culture is. Chris Brown beats the fuck out of Rihanna, swells her eyes shut. Still people are like, yeah, but he's still putting out music and it was a pretty good song. And yeah, you know, everybody's got their trials and tribulations. And you're like, yeah, he was canceled for a minute, right? R. Kelly, once again, like this isn't the first time that he's proven to be a piece of shit. Still somehow they're existing.
See, and that's what really bugs me in a lot of ways where I see a real double
You should
standard.
name a white guy quick. This is sounding racist.
No, right? but saying this is racist. Saying that there's a
we
double
were talking about hip hop for
racist,
Christ's sakes, and then you start talking R. Kelly. That's a
Well, no, okay. If we could imagine, you know, like, and well, I heard that. Oh my God, this guy needs to be canceled because he groomed a girl, and he was nice to her when she was young, and then when she was old enough, they got in a relationship.
That used to be marriage, by the way, folks.
They didn't wait till it was old
Talk
enough.
to your grandparents real quick before you start passing judgment. How'd your ass get here? Well, Grandma was 14. Grandpa just gotten back from the war.
Yeah, so he brought her flowers. They hung out till she was old enough to get married. You know, like, but now in the cancel culture community, that guy's the worst demon in the world because he gave tickets to somebody who was 17. Well, he's not pissing on their face in a video.
Christ. Yet.
You know, like, but that person, we don't cancel him because his culture has been traumatized, so therefore we can't have an opinion. And I don't buy that anymore. And, you know, I don't buy it. Well, because a monster's a fucking monster's a monster.
Yeah.
And
Cosby's a Cosby, a Cosby.
Right? Right? Okay, so the guy who murdered my aunt. Now to take a dark turn.
Jesus Christ!
Okay.
Yeah, make it personal.
Well,
Let's make
the guy
everybody
that murdered my
That's
aunt.
what we're here for. Fuck.
He violently sexually assaulted a child. He spent 7 years in jail. He gets out. He's out a month and a half. He murders my aunt. He goes to jail 15 to life. Escapes jail. Murders another man for a car. Dude's a fucking monster. He's given up his right to be treated as the poor, victimized, traumatized kid when he forfeited his life to become a douchebag, the deepest level of douchebag, in my opinion. So
I think you're using that term lightly. He's a real douchebag.
Well, I don't know. There's
Murderer, rapist, child rapist,
monster.
Yeah,
He's a monster.
What a dildo.
So when a group of young men break into a house and they abuse a 12-year-old girl. But then their lawyer says, well, you don't understand. They came from an impoverished area and they didn't have proper education. And no, they chose to be fucking monsters, right? And I think these things they merit conversation. Yeah. They merit conversation.
And all those things, there's so many things, truthfully broken earlier in the past of those 100%. People. Like but again, it's being accountable at some point.
Ownership and trying to break the toxicity.
When it's breaking windows at the school or it's entering to perform an assault, you gotta fucking handle them differently, you know. Like that isn't, and again, that probably wasn't the first experience just using that example for any kid, nobody starts there.
That's
you
a
know
good
what I
point,
mean?
yeah.
There's been other escalation before that, but then a lot of times through the cracks, schools don't want to deal with shit. If the parents aren't already there in the first place doing anything, who's doing anything at home about that?
An overloaded justice system, all of it.
It
All
gets
of
to
it.
be, and I mean, it does ultimately, and it seems unfair to parents to say this, but I mean, it ultimately does come back down to like home life for almost everybody, right?
Well, and that's
And
like that one preacher. He's
personal
like, if you
fucking
really
responsibility.
care about, I
Yeah.
don't know, truth and reconciliation or Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter or eliminating the racism, you also need to care about what's happening in your community
Yeah.
and making better young
Well,
men.
and that's every fucking poor community, every marginalized community, every like I can picture lots of trailer parks that are the very similar cycle of fucking abuse and back around, and I moved out and I came back and I'm three doors down now, and
Yep.
it's
Well,
all
and
the same
that's-
kind of shit.
But it's kind of a given that, like, yeah, in my world, in my community, toxicity, when we recognize it, it's our problem.
Yeah.
You know, you're just a fucking
No, true,
douchebag.
true.
You know, I'm not allowed to say, but I'm a victim of the system.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, which in some ways I was. I was a victim of like a toxic system, ideas of toxic masculinity, ideas on sexuality.
Well, you know what? Like it used to be just being like having enough tattoos. You could tell people that from a distance.
Yeah.
You just walking along. They'd
I'm
be
a
like, you know
scumbag.
what, don't
Leave me
bother
alone,
with
bro.
him. Don't ask him for directions. It's tattoo culture that ruined all this. Because now I can't just show people in advance that I'm not the guy you need to ask for.
They think I'm
Of course,
trendy.
yeah, I am now. You know what I mean? But for a long time, I'm like, I don't want to fucking talk to you, stranger.
Well,
Get away. These are all symbols to get away.
Yeah, I told my girlfriend it used to be like the what is it, the spotted fire frogs in the jungle. Like they're like little neon yellow, but they got the black marks all over that says "Do not touch me. I am poisonous. Like,
Yeah.
leave me the fuck alone."
Yeah.
And it was an outlier thing, you know, an
Sure.
outside of society. Look, I'm probably a scumbag compared to your value system. Leave me the fuck alone. Well, now I'm trending. You know, it's like, oh, he's cool. He's got all that stuff.
And then holding you accountable too to their sets of standards.
why
Hey,
aren't you?
it's
Why
like,
are you so toxic?
Yeah. You seem like a cool tattoo guy.
Oh, fuck, leave me alone. Like, go away. I just want to be left alone and not end up.
Yeah, on the drive over here, we had to take a small detour through some alleys that I was familiar with already. And I'm like, I've pissed in this alley a lot. And I'm like, you know what? There's quite a few alleys in this city that I could claim as to maybe having one of the higher piss and puke counts in them. And I'm like, why am I even marginally fucking proud of that whatsoever?
Yeah.
It's like,
I had
spent
sex with
lots
a
of
girl
times
in a cardboard
alleys.
box in that alley.
Jesus Christ. Well, I still remember one time. I remember one time passing out outside Walkers, and you seeing me. And this was before I was even in the club, because you didn't even really know me at the time. And you kind of see me, and you were like, "Hey, dude, you doing okay?" I'm like, "It's all good, brother. Just too much whiskey." And I'm leaning up against, like, sitting on the wall. And you're like, "Okay," and you fucked off on your bike. Well, fuck. Luckily, I don't know if you remember Dan LeMan.
Okay, I
You know,
recognize the name.
Bald dude.
Okay.
And anyways, I remember him picking me up and putting me in a cab and taking me to his house. And then the next day I didn't know whose house I was, what neighborhood was, nothing like that. Hey, if I go upstairs, a little note on this pizza box. Hey, bro, hope you're not dead. You know, like
That's
fucking
considerate.
whatever. I was like,
I hope you're not
and
dead.
I barely
If
knew
you
Dan
read
at
this,
the
you
time.
aren't dead.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, fuck. I've had some good friends in the past that like just casual acquaintances are like, fuck, bring them along. Don't leave them there. They'll pick them apart.
Yeah.
Don't be just pieces by
You'll
tomorrow.
get hypothermia from
Yeah.
the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just sit down on the sidewalk outside.
Well,
the
man,
bar.
being a
It's fine.
scumbag, okay, so I still look the part. Like, yeah, it is what it is. So I went the other day when we were on our way out to go collect sage, which is I'm a fucking hippie. But okay, so we're on our way to go collect sage to make smudges. And I pull up to 7-Eleven and I'm getting my gas. And I see these two guys and they're literally got a little camp set outside 7-Eleven begging for change. And I'm like paying with my Visa. And I'm like, fuck, you know what? Fucking, I'm going to get these guys some lunch, right? Because I got extra cash. They don't have anything. So I go in. I don't need to because I'm paying with my Visa at the pump. So I go in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some wedges and I'm going to get these Danishes and some drinks. I'm getting it all in a bag. And the cop's outside and he starts fucking do and like giving them shit. And I'm like, see, of course, these guys.
And this is the time that you would want
Yeah,
to do this.
yeah.
It's like, all right, now enter the police officer.
So the
Come on,
cop's sitting there and he's
Karma,
kind of beaking at these guys and they're just like this and, you know, they're kind of getting their stuff together. And then he walks in and he's looking me up and down, like, because I got a T-shirt and maybe a tank top and shorts on and like, oh, tattooed guy, blah, blah, blah. And
You one of these homeless hanging out around?
right, I don't know. So I take my bag and I go and I give it to the guy and he's like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, here you go, man. Like, I got gas, you know, just take the food. And I don't know if he's kicking you out or whatever. So then I'm going to my truck and this cop's like, hey, hey, and he follows me out. And I'm like, what the fuck is the problem now? Like, what did I do wrong? And like, is my license plate on crooked? I don't know. And he's like, well, that's a pretty solid thing you did in there. I'm like, oh, thanks, cop. I need your approval.
Jesus
Christ. Like, why didn't you do it?
Thanks for making me shit my pants thinking I'm going to have to fucking deal with an issue now. And they're like, oh, you're a pretty good guy. Really? Okay, well, I mean, let's just acknowledge each other from a distance from now on.
See, and okay, so this is an interesting thing because that was my first thing. I'm like, what am I in trouble for? What did I do wrong?
I would not think you're coming up to speak to me because of something positive.
Yes, and even the fact, this is me, it may not be other people, the fact that he felt that he needed to tell me that it was a good thing I did. Thanks for your approval, cop.
Fuck you, motherfucker. What? I do good things all the goddamn time.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, why didn't you?
You should have thanked him for not kicking the shit out of him in front of everybody.
Right.
Hey, thanks for not beating the fuck out of those guys. I really appreciate it. That'd have been tough for me to go to work after this. You're one of the good ones, hey?
You're a good one. Yeah, you totally didn't arrest those guys for no reason.
To. Luckily, you're just off your cycle this month.
Oh, Jesus.
Don't catch him on top of that fucking thing. You on that TRT yet, bud?
See, and that one really kind of, it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, on a few levels, like, that guy had money in his pocket. He could have bought those guys food, but instead he just kicks them out. Get out of here. You can't hang out here. And the guy he thought was probably, this is my assumption, but maybe it's just projection, the scumbag tattooed, maybe white power looking dude, biker-y fucking guy with a beard. Oh, wait, he just bought those native guys food. Because we're in the same boat. You're not part of the boat, cop. At least in my world,
I don't give a fuck these guys might rob me. At least we're in the same fucking boat.
Yeah.
You big boat bitch.
Yeah. Well, we're coming from two different worlds, man. That's just it. I relate more to them than I do to you.
Yeah, ain't that the fucking truth? Well, I was saying that's something that's holding me back with my job is I am legitimately uncomfortable talking to wealthy people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not used to it.
You got that money. How about you give me some of that money?
Judged, a little bit. And I know they're not, or maybe they are. I don't fucking know, but I always feel like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and it's just two different value systems. But that's the funny thing. Like, I just watched this documentary on... it was a skinhead documentary on Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure it's called Skinhead Attitude. But it talks about the roots and the history of the culture when it was like Jamaican skinheads. Like, that ska was skinhead reggae, right? And like, that's where it all started out. The two-tone where like, there's like black guys with suspenders. Like, I'm a skinhead. Din, 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 din. And it's like, so that's where it all started off. And then what ended up happening is like a whole bunch of like young, unemployed, white kids got involved. And then the punk movement kind of took over the ska movement, and the skinhead punk was oi. But there was one band, Screwdriver, that were really involved with like the British National Front and National Party, which were like fascists, who started putting like patriotic songs out and questioning the justice system. And then like, wait a second, who's behind capitalism? And like, next thing you know, you get into this band a few albums deep, and they're
this is the one titled just Globalists. And you're like, wait, what?
Well,
what are we getting into?
And some of it makes sense, but then all of a sudden it's like, but don't you know?
George Soros, George Soros.
Jews. Right? And that changed the entire face of the movement.
Yeah,
but it's funny because they talk about like the trad skins and the sharp skins, sharp being skinhead against racial prejudice, and rash skins, anarchist, socialist skinheads, red anarchist skinheads. So there's different factions within the subculture. And if you look at the traditional guys and the sharps and the rash guys, they're usually well thought out guys that like their music, that are well spoken. And then you get the hillbilly fucking dimwits that are boneheads, like the racist guys are like, wah-par, they're just like hillbillies. And
I kept it short for the mates to start with, and then I just liked the style.
I had some laughs I had to get rid of.
Yep.
But that's the thing. And you could compare the two cultures between these, and the working class conscious guys with like very little future tend to have more in common with the street guys with no future than these hillbilly white power goofballs that associate with a system that doesn't give two fucks about them.
Yeah, right.
Like,
they'll champion it even.
Yeah. We need to preserve our way of life that's kept you in the fucking gutter your entire life.
You gotta keep that war on drugs going on. Keep our streets clean. Get me some more of that meth while we're at it. You're gonna be part of that.
Yeah, that's the most confusing and hypocritical shit. Like some guys like, you know what? I can't stand globalists or capitalists. And I'm like, I don't think you understand either of those words. Because if you were really talking about this stuff, maybe you should hang out with the Reds and anarchists because they got that shit down a little bit more than you. But I try to be, it's tough because I've got opinions on things and they're questioning opinions, and I don't trust capitalism and I don't trust the systems that are in play. And I think there's a ruling class and a subjugated class. Now, I don't think it's a racist thing. I don't think it's just ruling power, but they have set up hierarchy. You know what I mean? I would definitely say...
the general control of power is definitely wealthy over everybody else,
yes,
right?
It's wealth.
But then it's like, you still have different structures to that you're like, but we can really squeeze the fuck out of this group. Yes. You know what I mean?
Africa is great for squeezing.
It might even shift a little bit sometimes where it's like, no, we'll get them mad at each other and then we'll shift it to that one for a bit and then we'll squeeze the fuck out of them.
See, and that's very interesting how I was talking about that with a buddy of mine the other day where... The socialist left, the progressive left, used to be very class conscious. And they would talk about this, the rich versus the poor, the working class, or the exploited class. Mm-hmm. The new left is all racial identity conscious, or it's identity politics, which seems to be playing into the hands of the racist right, who want everything to be racial identity politics.
Well, I wonder if that isn't even a concerted effort by some people. It's like, you know what? Keep them fighting amongst them fucking selves. Have them worrying about whether or not the black people have more rights than trans people or trans people have more rights than women. Get them all fighting amongst themselves.
Yeah.
And exactly. And keep them fighting with the poor dumb whites also while we're at it. And then we can just keep milking all of them.
Yeah, they'll never look up. They'll always continue to support a system. And it's very interesting in watching, depending on the situation, where the anti-government, anti-system left suddenly, and I don't want to get into the COVID situation, but suddenly got right into the government's pocket and said, well, the government knows what's right for us. We should probably follow along. And then all of a sudden these anti-government or the pro-government law and order types shifted into the I don't trust the government. I don't want the jab. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what the fuck? You guys just flip-flop.
Well, and what I think it is too is that it's kind of like, we've talked about this before, but kind of like the core of those ideologies is what's better for the for me or what's better for the herd,
versus
right?
The community.
And at this time, many people on that side see giving up power and control to the government and being told what to do is better for the herd, whereas on the other side they say no. The libertarian in me is coming out now, and I don't want anybody telling me what to do.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. It is a tough balance. So the people that were traditionally all
anybody that works in any if this was like a big thing that was all separate offices, anybody that works in one of those offices weren't you just mad at me last week?
Yes.
All right, take a seat, grab the desk beside me, and then you shifted out. Who's in here? The guy that was mad at me the week before. Isn't that weird? All right, come on, guys. We're still doing the same thing.
Wing to wing. You guys are over here now, and you guys got to move over there. And so you're kind of wondering, well, do we trust the government or do you not trust the government? Do we, believe in a community or do we believe in the individual? Yeah. Are we pro-class or are we pro-identity?
Well, and I think the only reason anybody does that is to pick a team. If you just want to do the thing that's going to be best for you and everybody, it's always a balance in those things. It's like balance my thing that I need for me to keep me safe. I don't want to give up too much so that I'm homeless, but at the same time, I don't need to take so much that everybody else is homeless. Find that balance. But again, how do you get a jersey then? How do you get to be on a team if you just stand in the middle and go, well, you know what? I don't trust the government all the time, but I feel like this is a time where I can trust them in a way that makes sense, and I can give up this much responsibility to them, that. And I think that's what many people do throughout their lives, but we can't take those sides on Facebook and shit like that, right?
Because it's still performative activism. One or the other. Performative activism. They're doing it for the gram. They're doing it for social media. And, so many of these activists, they don't want to give up their convenience. They don't want to give up their lifestyle to make life better for other people. Mm-hmm. They want to put a hashtag on or put their screen black, and that's all I had to do because I'm on the right side of history. No, it all actually involves giving up your comfort zone, giving up your luxury, giving up, whatever you're eating or whatever you're driving or how you're, single-use plastics. Mm-hmm. These are the things that would actually, you have to change your lifestyle. Well, I don't want lifestyle change. I just want to say I believe in lifestyle change.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's, and I'm as guilty as the next guy.
Oh, fuck, dude. That's why I can recognize it.
Yeah. I drive a big truck, I'm still using single-use plastics. I use paper towels. I know I shouldn't. You know what I mean? I enjoy my white privilege. It's here. You know,
Yeah.
you're welcome for colonialism. Cool. Thanks,
Your white
colonialism.
privilege is on display with the fact that you can even come back with less than a yes sir or no sir right away to that
fuck.
officer, right? That's even you just being like, you know what? I'm gonna say yeah, whatever, but I'm not gonna be as harsh as I want, but I can still be more harsh than most.
Yes, I can. Well, that's absolutely true. I can
Yep.
say, you know what? I'm not consenting to this search. You guys are out of line.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get smashed in the face.
I was just gonna
you
say
know?
most other people, the next thing they see is stars. The next thing I remember hearing was ringing in my ears.
Well, to be fair, to be honest and fair, the Saskatchewan cops are not as brutal as large like Vancouver cops or Montreal cops. Straight up, there's tons of stories of absolutely belligerent and violent people that are just restrained and put in cells.
Well,
You know?
and I think in Saskatoon they've been held accountable publicly enough times.
Starlight tours.
They fucking everybody knows about it still, right? And that was I haven't heard of anything about that in 20 years, but maybe it's still happening.
They
I
got
don't fucking
checked,
know.
I think, pretty hard.
That's it, right? So it's like no, when you're held accountable over that kind of shit, eventually it does kind of transfer. I don't know why we're laughing.
When you Wikipedia Saskatoon police and the only thing that
Oh my
pops up
God.
is the fact that they dump people out of town and they froze to death, Saskatoon police changes their face.
Yeah,
they
fair enough,
make an
right?
effort.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's not us. That was once
Yep.
upon a time. Yeah. There was a different generation of cops back in the 80s and the 70s. You know, when they would hire like the 6'5", 250-pound minimum thug dudes. You know, like that was just a different animal. Yeah, times have changed a lot. since
Sexier
then.
though, I'll tell you what. A lot of
Well,
big burly men.
Well, yeah, big burly men in uniforms.
men in
You got
uniform.
taller boots. But
Mine didn't come with suspenders and garters. Where's the suspenders and garters?
yeah. So yeah, it's funny, but all cops are bastards. I think is a flawed thing. You know, reallocating funds to the police. Yeah, for sure. Put it into infrastructure for healing trauma, so you create less criminals. That's
Well, and that's my thing is like I want to take strain off of the police. You know what I mean? And stop having them in these circumstances where they're ill-equipped to deal with what it is because they're generally a hammer, not everything's a nail.
Well-
there needs to, more social spending, all that kind of shit, helping intervene before the police are needed.
healing cops.
Healing
man.
cops. Well, you know, there's been some. Sorry, I think there has been some steps to do that. Different programs in Saskatoon where it's like it is like just community patrol officers that they're like COP. You know what I mean?
I mean, healing the police officers.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I
Yeah,
see what
so they are vastly overrepresented in domestic abuse, police across the board,
Yeah.
because they've got such a high level of aggression and violence and PTSD in their jobs, straight up. You know, even we've got a common friend who's a correctional guard, and he has a degree in social sciences, and he wanted to be a social worker and said, you know what, I'm going to help the community by going to work in the jails, and I'm going to try and help counsel these guys and, you know, stop recidivism. Like, they're not going to come back and keep committing the same crimes. And after a year and a half, he told me, he's like, dude, I keep animals in a cage. That's my job.
Yeah, nobody
I
wants
keep
any help.
animals in a cage because they will throw shit and piss on you. They will attack you if given a choice. You let them out, they're right back the next week for the same fucking violent offense. That's what I do, is I keep animals in cage. His empathy level went from like, you know, we could change the world to holy fuck in like a year and a half. And imagine being a cop, a career cop.
Yeah, no doubt.
When you're going into another child abuse situation, domestic abuse
Sorry,
situation.
I'm just hoping
you know?
anyone who was at the beginning of this got to this part at least, because then it's like, you know, and I don't know about Pat. He seems like kind of a bad. And now you're like, no, I'm actually at the defensive police here, and how they have a really fucking tough job, and that I wouldn't want to do, and I would never be probably even properly suited for.
Man.
But that's the problem. Is all these they're not trained for, not suited for these circumstances, and they're stuck dealing with it, and nobody's helped them.
As a society, we have to choose some people to stand between chaos and order. And those people are fucking brave as fuck to say, look, I'm not going to let you abuse this child anymore. I'm not going to let you beat the shit out of your wife anymore. I'm not going to let you go into this like little grocery store with elderly people running it and put a gun to their head and take what they have. We choose certain people to stand on that line. And I think the idea that they're all bastards is a profoundly flawed idea. Okay, cool. You do that job.
If you can argue 90% of them are jaded. I don't know about all bastards, but most jaded.
Well, hurt,
Yeah.
injured. Like,
Yeah.
how many fucking child abuse cases do you need to attend before you're like, holy fuck, what's going on here? You know, like, this is gross, and it hurts your heart. And like, so all these people with these lofty ideas about fuck the police, you do their job for a month. You could have the same gear, whatever. You go through the training, you go attend these calls and tell me how much they're bastards, how you would handle that problem better. You know, the guy with a knife or a baseball bat and his girlfriend's on the floor bleeding, talk him out of it. De-escalate that situation. Or do you want to tackle him, put him in a fucking cell? put him in, handcuffs, get him away from his girlfriend or his kid or grandmother or whatever the case may be. When people are monsters, we need to delegate people in our society to handle monsters. And unfortunately, you, like Nietzsche said it, you look into the abyss and the abyss looks into you. Careful that when you struggle against monsters that you don't become a monster yourself. And I think that's basically what we're looking at with the cop situation. These guys fight monsters, and a lot of them have become monsters because they've just been desensitized to the atrocity. After, I guess, let's say 300 arrests where guys have swung on you and da-da-da-da-da, and finally you're like, get the fuck on the ground. Bam. You're on camera. You bastard, you brutal son of a bitch.
Yep.
Ugh. Where were you for the last 5 years when, like, you've seen what these guys do, like shooting up a neighborhood or shooting kids in a drive-by and kids get in the background. It's not just gangbangers, right? So, yeah, there's more nuance to that story, I think, than people want to give credit to, you know? And
well, and again, I still think all the solutions to all those are all social. It's mental health, it's
healing,
addictions counseling, and again with when you're talking about that, like just the domestic abuse, I think they live in a very small world a lot of times, cops, because it's like, who are you friends with? Other cops. You work shift work. A lot of times it's you may only see the people you work with and then your family socially. That's it, right? The worst of the worst in the city, the people that you work with that have to continue to deal with this every day that are as broken as you, and then your family who get to be around you when you're trying to fucking deal with that shit.
Yes. Yeah, it can be gross. And I think, across the board, see, I think that's what really boils down to it. And Ryan Miley talked about this in his book a long time ago. Healing is the solution. A society that prioritizes healthcare. Not just like physical health care, like, oh yeah, we're going to fix your broken leg, but like emotional and spiritual. Like, I guess that's where my take on indigenous culture would come in with the reconciliation, because indigenous culture had a different approach to spiritual and emotional healing for trauma. They have sweat lodges, they have the sun dances, they got smudging, they have ceremony, they have all these things that they heal from. They've got a like sharing circles and community, which our culture, Western culture, largely is absent. Like we had church.
That's it. I was just trying to think. Yeah, like maybe there's religion where people kind of find that, or through therapy. But I mean, that's
expensive.
That's what I was going to say. Like I don't think that a large amount of the population. It may have had some instance where they were involved with it, but like to do it regularly every week, kind of. I don't know a lot of people.
And I think that's what's necessary.
Yeah.
Is weekly or even bi-weekly, like self-work. And when you're doing ceremony, if you can go to a sweat lodge, or you can smudge, or you can do this stuff, and you can try or pray. I'm not dismissing traditional monotheism, like, because it does make a lot of people better. It does help people. But when it's just an obedience trip and like you just obey. Yeah. As opposed to doing your
recite
work.
the fucking thing while you kneel, and then hopefully he heard the recital. That's not, because again, like I just talking about meditating earlier. It was through meditation that I feel like I found what other people find the value in prayer. Because then I was like, well, I could see this being the same kind of experience for someone who was, this is what they were praying with the same intent, trying to solve a problem, trying to work through something, whatever it is. And they're doing basically the same thing I am. They're thinking it through. They're working it out. They're maybe asking a higher power, but I ask the universe. That's just your brain
talking to you.
Yeah.
You're hearing voices? That's your brain talking to you.
I agree. But I understand the value of it a little more than if they get the same, they get the same kind of clarity and vision out of it that I do.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit different tool. Whatever. I don't like that you're lying to yourself because you're asking someone else. You should realize
we're all lying to ourselves.
Yeah, well,
we're all lying to ourselves. Well, and then that's just it. We can differentiate whose delusions are acceptable and whose aren't. But I just think that as a culture, we need to start prioritizing healing and health and compassion. Period. That's just it. And these are principle, like spiritual, psychological principles, as opposed to politics. So if you prioritize healing people, and you look at people as being sick or injured or hurt and that need healing across the board. You can call it spiritual, you can call it psychological, whatever, emotional, physical even. If you look at it like that, society heals itself. You know what I mean? Or if people prioritize their own health, I think like their own personal healing, like physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual is the medicine wheel, First Nations medicine wheel, right? If you pay attention to all four of those quadrants and you focus on your own healing, your life gets better.
Yeah.
Your life gets better. You know, I got to do some physical exercise today. What am I doing to heal psychologically? Emotionally, am I healthy? You know, what's my spiritual practice, my connection to the greater ecosystem, you know, like, so if you pay attention to that stuff, I think as a society will benefit, but it's been erased from Western society. And when we talk about real colonization, I think that's the issue. It's erased our connection with the earth. It's erased our connection with each other, with animals, with the greater.
Well, and like the connection to like actual community, like the people that live around you, has been replaced with like, well, you get that by going to see a sports team. You know what I mean? You get to that's your community thing. When it's like
arbitrary,
yeah, but they don't
tribe.
necessarily live on my street. You know what I mean? Like that's the bigger community, sure. Whereas, and I've kind of felt it a little bit in the neighborhood I live in. I've been there for a bit now, and I'm starting to get so like more of the neighbors recognize me when I'm walking my dogs and stuff, and we start seeing like there's more people that have been there for a while, and people are looking after their yards and all that kind of shit, and it starts to feel like a community.
Yep.
It starts to feel like something that's familiar and everybody's kind of comfortable and safe and doing their own thing and they're all contributing to it because they're and it's not just judgment. Oh, your yard looks like shit. You know what I mean? It's like, no, we're just all doing our things and trying to get better, and we recognize other people doing it, and that makes us feel like we're part of something.
Well, the large industrialization of society and these megapolises, these huge like cities where it's connectivity to your neighbor is considered a bad thing versus a virtue.
It's all about trying to cut everybody else in the world out.
I'm isolated. I leave my cubicle. I go to
Yeah.
my car. I go to my job. I go to my car. I go to my cubicle. I go like that's just it. You don't want to know who's living next to you in the condo, and that's I would consider a product of colonization. You know,
Fucking right.
when as opposed to we're all.
And even fundamentally, they think if you're trying to maintain a control system, you don't want people just. You all just live together on the same block and you get together and it turns out you all have a bunch of similar issues that are all tied to your place in society.
Things are
that
wrong.
aren't just about like what you look like or what religion you believe, but more about where you are on the fucking hierarchy of money's made. And then those people they start tying together. That's when you get revolutions. That's when you get people going like, wait a minute.
And you don't want
we're
that
not each other's
community.
problem. It's up there.
Well, what was it? You said that like we've replaced community with these arbitrary institutions like sports teams and like go Rough Riders. That's Saskatchewan unity.
Pick a color, pick a flag.
As opposed to meeting at the coffee shop and saying, hey man, you've been down lately. What's going on? Are you okay? You need anything from me? That's a different thing because the Rough Riders don't give a flying fuck if you're doing good or bad. It's just like this arbitrary thing. Now, when you go to, a temple or you go to church or you maybe even just support groups, you have the club, subcultures are a little more supportive. You have like smaller groups of people that are like, hey man, you need a hand? I got you. I got your back. That's what people have lost. And I think that helps re-healing when we can rebuild those things. And, well, in Hinduism, they call it namaste. The light in you is the same light that animates me, right? And recognizing the humanity behind everybody. I've been watching this series on Amazon. And it's called The Underground Railroad. It's not a chill watch for people that want to watch it, but it's really good. It's about a girl trying to escape slavery, basically. And it's kind of like there's some metaphorical poetry, liberties taken, like art, right? There's a literal underground railroad, but other than that, it's really, really good show. And the one character, it's funny, he's a slave catcher, but it shows his youth, and his dad would only hire freemen. He wouldn't take slaves, even though he was living in the South. And he's like, well, why? It would be cheaper. We would make more money with our business if we didn't have to pay these people. You just buy one, and they do the work for free. You own them. And he's like, well, they're people. The Great Spirit is in all of us. I look at a man, and I see I am him. He is me. We are the same spirit. Animates both of us, and you need to recognize that. And the problem with the slave catcher is that he couldn't recognize the commonality between slaves and him. And he grew up being almost like a sociopath. Right? Where it's like, fuck it, these people are property. They call them it. It got away. It had a pup, right? It's a hard watch if you watch the Underground Railroad, but that's just it. If you can separate yourself from your fellow man, from your environment, then you can get away with whatever. And that's corporate fucking life, It doesn't matter. Make money. So I think maybe cops need to see the commonality when they're dealing with people. Maybe the people that are hurt need to be healed. Right? That's my take on it. I don't know. And it has been for a long time. I debate with my one buddy. He thinks that the problems of the world can be solved with economics. And I'm like, I think the problems of the world need to be solved with psychology. or spirituality, depending on what let's just go with psychology. If you can heal people's psychology, they probably won't be so fucked. But I don't think either's going to happen. This is my doom and gloom side.
You got to get it in there.
Yeah,
you don't doom and gloom it up at least a little bit. People are going to think you're a clone.
A fucking hippie.
You swap him out.
Yeah, what did you do with Pat? But yeah, healing. I think, yeah, exactly. Smudge more. You can't overdose on smudging.
More. Healing and squealing, baby.
Yeah, love more, compassion more.
That's what I'm saying. A little healing, a little squealing.
Well,
we'll get that summertime feeling.
When you were talking about depression.
Honda days.
Honda days.
Do a commercial for Honda real quick.
Sponsored by Tesla.
Yeah.
Feel good. Environmental. So yeah, when we were talking about self-talk, when I'm like, I'm not good enough, I could do better, blah, blah, blah. I gotta change it and say, you are better. You are healing. You are stronger. You are happy. You are, you are not unhappy. It's a lot of negative for self-talk, right? You are not unhappy. Nope. So yeah, that self-talk, that affirmation stuff comes into play when you're doing meditation or just mantra or anything else, just
the positive shit you want to see.
Yeah. Create neural pathways.
You're not there to focus on the negative stuff and let it fucking eat you.
So yeah, my kid, you were talking about fucked up kids a little while ago, and I wanted to touch on it because I had actually new in high school, 13, 14-year-old kids in her class. Some boy pulls his pecker out in the back of class and starts jacking off. Another kid films it. I don't know, and then starts airdropping it to girls in the class. This is my buddy jacking off.
Fuck.
Now, so I asked her, I'm like, well, she didn't get one, but I'm like, so do you think that these kids thought it was a stunt? Or did the kid just be a weirdo and he's jacking off and his friend or a person takes a picture and just decides to send it to people? And she's like, I don't know. I think it was a stunt that these two boys thought it was funny and they were going to send this picture of him jacking off to these girls. Like this 13, 14-year-old kids with phones now and technology.
Hey, idiots.
And
no concept of consequences.
Well, and where do they get trained by this stuff, right? And like where
some shit they saw on the fucking internet.
Yeah, or porn.
This
is, I think that's the young man like.
Yeah, right. They thought that was how they were going to get a chick, or some fucking.
Like, look at it,
fucking idiots.
I worked with a dude one time. This is leading into my little bit of a porn rant, but whatever. I worked with a dude one time, and we were moving furniture for a living. And this guy was so inundated with this culture that he thought any girl at a bus stop he could probably pull over and start chatting up and then have sex in the back of our moving truck. Because he's watched enough of these Bang Bro fucking videos that's real life. That's how that happens.
Does he think if he found a dragon egg, he could hatch it and ride it?
Right, and
what the fuck are you talking about?
You realize that's fiction. That's absolute fiction. Yeah. That stuff doesn't teach you really about sexuality. It teaches you about male lust and male fantasy about sexuality. That's not real fucking life. But then what ends up happening is these young guys will meet a partner, and they've been so inundated with this stuff, they try and pull that with their partner, and they're like, 1, I don't like that thing. 2, it's not physically comfortable. 3, it's degrading, but this is how you do it. Yeah. Right? This is how sex happens. Yeah. No, that's how fucking male lust entertainment happens, Yeah. So I'm kind of at a weird spot with my relationship with the adult industry. When people are like, oh, you're judging sex workers? Maybe. Maybe because...
Well, and what's crazy is about this is like that those kids shouldn't even be able to see that, right?
But all they have to do is press a button.
Exactly. But that's the thing, right? Because it's like legally, no, like if they were to go buy a magazine, they'd have to be over X age to do that. Every site has a age verification thing if you're going to go on there, but it's the internet, so you don't need anything.
There's no anywhere. ID button.
You put boobs in and just see what happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because that's, again, if you're speaking ill of it and then people take offense to it, it's like, yeah, but I'm not talking about the legal and adult aspect of the entertainment. I'm talking about the effect on children.
Well, I'm also talking about the illegal adult.
Legally supposed to be watching this. You know what I mean? Well, fair enough. Yeah. But like with that instance, those aren't adults seeing that and then making that inference. That's, again, stupid fucking kids with no concept of consequences. Because like, all I can think of is the idea of taking your dick out in public and jerking off while somebody throws it. You're going to jail. Yep. That's it. That's the only possible outcome to any of this. There may be things that happen along the way before you get to jail, but the end result is going to be fucking jail.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the very least, that seems like a date rape waiting to happen, at the very least.
Well, that kid's like that. That's how, and again, back in the day, that's how you ended up in a different school. Mm-hmm. I don't know what people do now, but like, that's like, like you need to watch this one. So
Yeah, he's a fucking idiot kid.
Well, you're going to do that, and then it wasn't like it was a row of them, or every year this is what we do. You know, like Jesus Christ. But that would make it better. I'm just saying, like it's not like it's commonplace.
But in my perspective, I think all of this, and like the movement towards like sex work acceptance and porn acceptance and OnlyFans, it lends itself back to that idea of the superficial consumerist bullshit, that hyper materialist. There's there's no intimacy, there's no sex. It's like, look at my asshole, give me money. Like, what?
Yeah, and like, and it's empowering in those ways.
Is it empowering?
But like, if you think like that, you're like that. I have power that I can just get money out of people. That's a power I want. You know what I mean? That's a power. I guess there's power in that for people that want that.
But at the same time, you're also encouraging every dude, you're encouraging every dude that says, okay, if I give you money, I can see your asshole, to look at the girl at the bus stop to think, hey, if I give you money, can I see your asshole? Because that's the culture we're living in. And that's where I'm at. Like, it's funny because I joke around that I'm kind of shifting towards the more conservative side of things. But I really think that a lot of the adult content and the sex work acceptance and all of that stuff that's being championed by the progressive left has, at the same time, not considered the real psychological consequences of the porn addiction and the porn culture and the male gaze. You know, it's funny because feminists talk about this all the time. You know, don't objectify me, but at the same time, don't slut shame me. Don't tell me that I shouldn't be able to be a porn star, but I don't want you to behave the way that people behave once they've been inundated with a porn culture. Which do you want? Which do you want? And I'm taking the stance where I'm kind of like, no, I'm not super down with porn culture anymore. And I just I'm not really. And it's funny, as a fetish guy, because I'm right involved with the fetish community, and I realized, because I used to say I don't watch porn, I don't rub one out to porn movies or Pornhub and stuff. But then I realized I'm on a website, a social media website, where, you know, every third post is somebody's fucking naked body or doing something, and I forgot that I'm just constantly inundated with it. And then you go to the gym.
It's just not hardcore.
No,
you're inundated with softcore porn.
I'm not sitting there rubbing one out. You know,
it's constant sexualization, objectification.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Which again is the claim. No, this is our empowerment. I'm a feminist now, and then it's like, yeah, but it's to be an object of desire, correct?
Yes.
But don't you objectify me in person in real life?
Yes,
and
allowing men to open the neural pathways of objectification. Sex as objects, or sex as an action, and the people that you have sex with are objects, as opposed to actually human beings.
Well, and again, it's all about fucking control and manipulation. Then, right? I want money from men, or I want companionship, or I want safety, or whatever the fuck it is I want. So I'm gonna, do these things. Turn me into an object that you'll desire so that I can get those things from you. And it's actually, I got Patrice O'Neill on my list here because I was just listening to some shit where he was talking about this, basically, where he's like, that's kind of like the nature of male-female relationships, is like, because he had a joke to kind of put this into perspective. He's like, for the male and female perspective difference, like for what's needed from a relationship, he's like, for me to want to be with a woman, I just basically got to want to fuck her. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the core of it. Everything else is kind of extra. If she's cool on top of that, whatever else, that can grow over time. But for you to want to be with me, I probably got to have a decent job. I probably got to be okay looking, have my shit together. I probably got to have a bit of personality. I probably got to be at least a little bit funny. I probably got to have my shit together in some way that makes you think that I'm at least a little bit better than you, because then you want to try and get that. You want to grab onto that. No, you don't want to go down to a guy. You don't want to
funny ninja theory.
You don't want to go and find, because he kind of put it like this.
Downgrade and upgrade. Yeah,
exactly. We put it like this. He's like, say like we're both tigers. Like, I'm a man tiger, you're a female tiger, and the only person that can make you feel like a female tiger is a man tiger. That's it. But if you want to control and own and manipulate, well, you can go and fuck around with a penguin or a deer or whatever else. But like, those guys are going to do your dishes and do your laundry and pick you up from work and do all the things you want, but they can never treat you like a woman tiger, because they're not men tigers. They're not that same fucking level or slightly above you that you want to get at. And he says, and it's kind of programmed into all women. And I'm like, that kind of doesn't make sense, because who wants to fuck down? Who wants to fuck down a class, right?
It doesn't really matter, as long as, well, and this is my take on it. I think our biological imperative is to secure safety and security
Exactly, right?
and future. As a matter of fact, there's been...
Sorry, I was just gonna say, but we don't need any of those things in the relationship from women.
Well, because we can plant a seed and fuck off.
Exactly, right?
We have
that's
no
the difference.
obligation.
That's why they need to try and grab someone who's higher on the ladder of whatever they
security
feel
of some
They have
sort.
to try and grab that, right?
Well, that's
And he
one
says,
angle of looking at
and
it.
women don't. And he said, to kind of articulate this, he says, so like say that most women agree just men are just there to fuck them. So you just keep them there because you got a pussy. That's it, right? He says, so say you get in a train accident and your pussy gets cut clean off and that's it. That's not an option anymore. He says, so what would you ladies, he's doing this to a crowd. He says, what would you ladies do to keep your man then? And somebody's like, I'd suck his dick. And he's like, okay, mouth. Yeah, you give him your mouth. Okay. Somebody else, I'd let him fuck me in the ass. And he's like, okay, you give him your ass. He says, okay, ladies, I asked you what you'd do if you couldn't use your pussy to keep your man anymore, and you offered up a series of holes. He says, I didn't do that. None of you said learn how to play Xbox. None of you said tell better stories. None of you said start fishing. You know what I mean? To keep a man around so you got these things you do. He says, those are the things that we have to do to make ourselves look valuable to you. You just got to keep desirable to us for us to keep there.
Well, all of this stuff...
At the core. And I mean, and it's not about fucking, because women, it's the emotional shit they want from you. It's the safety. It's the whatever, right? Whereas we want the physical thing. But it's the same
All of this
transaction.
has neglected, all of it, love.
True, but
Love.
but it develops
Compassion
differently.
for another human
but
being.
that doesn't develop at the same pace for both of us, right? So when you meet, you can argue people can just fall in love when they meet them, but generally for a guy, it's like as you hang out with someone more, you learn more about their personality and you learn about like their quirks and how funny they are and how cute they are when they do these things and whatever else, and that makes you fall for them. Whereas a lot of times women already start there and they're looking at the potential. They're going like, he's already got these things, and I can see him 5 years from now having my kids and driving me around and all that kind of shit.
The human
right?
animal. There's been tons of studies. If you want to check it out, Desmond Morris is one of my favorites, and he did the human animal, the naked zoo, or the naked ape, human animal, and the human zoo. I think are three of his books, and he looks at humans as just like he's an like a zoological study of like this species, the naked
Put
ape.
some pants on these monkeys.
Yeah, the
Same
naked
thing.
ape.
Yeah.
and so in his studies, they find that they tend that men look for a visual appearance. You know what I mean? I want my genes to mate with those genes because then my kids will probably be pretty and be able to mate. But then I can go and do it here, and I can go and do it there, and I can do it over here, and because I don't have to stick around. Now, the biological imperative for a woman choosing a mate is a bigger risk.
Yeah. Totally.
Because if he puts a baby
Yeah.
in me and fucks off, I no longer have any, security for the baby. I don't have a nest. I don't have any, unless I'm part of a larger tribe where we're all the communal kind of like fucking kind of deal. So there's a lot more at risk for a woman to choose a man than there is for a man to choose a minute. Hold on. And so when you say the jumping up and the choosing up, well, that's like choosing security and choosing a mate that potentially can provide safety, housing, love, belonging, all of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? But hormones change. So after they've created a nest, legitimately, after they've got a nest and they've got their partner, their long-term partner, and one or maybe two kids, legitimately, women's hormones change right when they're hitting their sexual peak, where they start looking for the sexier partners, the more superficial, sexier partners that they will cheat and have that extra child. Where the nesting man, I made another baby.
Exactly.
But they've got the secure man, but then hormonally, it's a desire for them to go after the more appealing visual children, right?
The tiger and the penguin. That's what I'm talking about. That's the difference.
So
right?
they can get the penguin if it's a rich penguin, but sooner or later they're going to want to have a tiger baby.
Yeah.
And I found that very, very interesting. But that's purely on a biological level. It's on a biological
and there's
level.
other things, and again, this doesn't apply to all types of relationships. This doesn't. I don't know that it would necessarily apply unless there was a real feminine and real masculine energy in a gay relationship. Maybe it would apply the same similarly. I don't know, but he's talking about man, women. That's it. You know,
Some
what I
of
mean?
the gay men I know are like the most superficial motherfuckers.
Sure.
You think about those douchebag guys like hot girl, hot girl, hot
Yeah.
girl. They're the same fucking
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
but
right.
they're
You
like
just
hot
look
guy,
at it.
hot
Yeah,
guy,
yeah,
hot
yeah.
guy. And I've met like Leathermen and like they're all like, hey, how's it going? Blah blah blah. And then my old leather guy buddy comes up. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? They're like, who's this? And I'm like, oh, you're treating him like an asshole because he's just like an older guy. And then I'm like, that's really shitty of you guys. That just changed my opinion on you a little bit. And at the same time, my lesbian friends that I've met, They look for substance and depth and communication and emotional support in their partners even more than the pretty lipstick kind of vibe, right? So you got this weird visual, superficial, slutty dude energy, and then you've got the woman energy, which is very emotional, connective. We're bonding real quick. Like the running joke is the second date for a lesbian is renting a U-Haul. Yeah. We're moving in together, right? So that's the thing where there are differences between the male and the female mind.
And I think, again, that's what Patrice's kind of whole thing was like. He's like, people keep being like, it's got to be equal in a relationship. And he's like, but equal doesn't work in a relationship. You have to have someone take the lead sometimes. He's like, even like, he gives another example too, where he's like, I'm just going to be doing Patrice O'Neill bits, I guess, for 10 minutes. But like, he's talking about how he's like, like, what's the highest praise you can give a woman? Like, what can you say to her to make her feel like she's number one in your life? And everybody usually goes with, well, she's your queen, And he's like, and what's the queen? They're like, and he's like, the king's bitch. She doesn't run shit. He's the king. You know what I mean? But she has to be with the king. He's like, I can marry a queen if I'm not a king, but I can never be king. She can never make me king. I can be a king and make somebody a queen. You know what I mean? So it's always an imbalance of power that way.
Well, that's a patriarchal angle on it.
But again, you can just even say it's energies. You can say feminine, masculine, right? Whatever, if that makes it easier. But like, it's never a balance. It's never truly equal.
No,
right?
in the SM scene, we recognize that right off the bat.
Yeah, see, there you go, you guys. Yes,
we
exactly.
We enter a relationship by establishing who's going to have the dominant personality.
You have to talk it out,
and trust me, because I've engaged with other dominants, like intimately, like, hey, we're going to get busy, and they're like, we kind of argue about how we're going to do stuff and where we're going to go for eats and who's going to go on top and all that stuff. And I'm like, this isn't going to jive.
Exactly.
And because that's my personality.
Yeah.
But there's tons of people I know that are very dominant women.
Yeah.
And they're like, by queen, the queen is queen.
Yeah,
and then there's the drones.
And that's a different dynamic.
But
right?
that's been negotiated. And I do believe that there's always, the goal would be a give and take,
man.
But usually there's like, the extrovert and the introvert, the dominant partner and the submissive partner or subservient partner, the talky person and the quiet person.
It might only be this far apart, and then other things are this far apart. But totally.
The leading and the following. But I don't look at it as a gender thing or as a sex thing.
Sure.
I really think it's a personality thing. We've got a couple that we always go for coffee with, and it's very interesting because I end up talking to the wife. Because she's the extroverted, talky. I have no problem putting my heart on my sleeve, and we can have a conversation for an hour and a half while her husband sits quietly and my partner sits quietly. And every once in a while, they'll both put a little quip in, but it's mostly two dominant personalities talking to each other, right?
Imagine if all four of you were trying to talk over top of each other. See, again, and I think that's why people get upset with Patrice O'Neill, because they hear that and they go, well, women aren't like that, men aren't that. He goes, yeah, but like, look at the overall thing. If you take the words I said, I would say relationship. He just says women, because that's the world he's dealing in, right? But you say relationship and then energy balance, power balance, we all see it, but we all try to tell ourselves that we're being equal. No, it's all, it's funny too, because I can think of some relationships where I know people that like, they've been married for like 30 years and people are like, no, that's an equal relationship. And then I saw a picture of one of them the other day. They had the same haircut. They had the same style of glasses. They had the same pair of shorts on. And this is a man and a woman. And I almost couldn't tell the difference when I'm squinting at them. You know what I mean? And it's because they've been together so long and they've adapted and they've become so much of the same. Like, and we're partners and we're equal. I'm like, because you're the fucking same though. If you're just the same and every decision you make, you're like, you feel like pancakes or waffles? Waffles. I knew you were going to say it. You know what I mean? Like,
they're already on the grill.
The fucking same. Then I guess that can work. But like, most people have a little bit of nuance between them and their partner that they're not exactly identical personalities.
Well, it's funny in our community, in the kink community, you'll have what's called munches, where people get together and they talk about like, well, kinky stuff, right? Like it's just basically a glorified coffee, but it's with like a fetish kind of intent. So you gather fetish people together, and there's sometimes bottom-oriented meetings, like top-minded meetings, and bottom-oriented meetings, like dominant personalities and submissive personalities. And it's fucking hilarious because when you get a munch full of a bunch of dominant personalities, you have clashes, you have people talking over each other, you have arguments on who's going to go where it's going to be held, what time it's going to be held, because everybody wants their way. And then when you have a group, a munch for bottoms and submissives, they can't decide which is the best place because they want to make everybody else happy, and then they show up and they're all quiet. and nobody wants to start or
The
lead
first
the
part
conversation.
just reminded me of the bastards meeting we had last night.
Yeah, right?
It's just like, the whole fucking 13 dominants all trying to like, I want
Alpha.
this. I think we should do it now.
Alpha personalities, and that's just it. And I think it's been, the kink community was really good for me that way, where I learned to engage and leave space, not try not to take up so much space, because that's just my personality. And I'm used to being with other people, present company included, that are also used to taking up space. The bastards, I'm a tattoo world, biker world, punk world. There was a lot of big personalities, playing in bands and stuff. Like, everybody's got God complexes.
It's all people that
tattoo
want
artists.
to be in front of hundreds of people and be the center of attention.
Yeah, it's like, or they're,
I like to do my craft, but also I need to get up in front of a crowd.
Yeah, the Bo Burnham style, Yeah, I'm a bit of a narcissist and I need a lot of attention. Yeah. But we're doing a podcast just to jack our own egos.
Again, you can judge us all you want. We're aware of our flaws. I'm aware how stupid what I just said sounded when I was just talking about I probably sound like a real misogynist from that. And again, it's not even necessarily my opinion. I just think it's interesting that that's how he framed it. When it is, I hear the talk of balance and equality so much, and then I think back to even my marriage and how I was like, that was kind of the goal a lot of times, and a lot of times it felt like what I was doing was equality, but a lot of times I was just giving up my opinion or whatever at the time to just be whatever we're doing it together, but it's what you want, and then again, that's not an equal balance.
Compromise is good,
but if I'd have been aware of it at the time, maybe I'd have done that differently, but like,
I've got a weird and a wildly politically incorrect thing to say, and
turn the cameras off.
Here we go. That the principle of equality is profoundly anti-natural. It's an arbitrary invention created by the noblest intellectual goals of human society, whether it's like monotheistic ethics or anything like that. In nature, there isn't equality. There isn't. There is hierarchies all throughout nature.
There's not equality.
Yes, exactly. And unfortunately, this is what encourages fascist thought, is the principle that equality is anti-natural. And to pretend that we're all equal isn't true. But there's separate but equal. There's differently abled. And all of that, you can't, who are we to say how the hierarchy works, And so that's the flaw with the fascist thinking, is that they all want to be on the top of the hierarchy. It doesn't matter if you're Spanish fascist or Italian fascist, German fascist, or whatever. That's the problem. But hierarchies are real. Hierarchies are real. You go into the ocean, you got big whales, you got little whales, you got sharks, you got small fish, you got plankton, you've got hierarchies are real. And people don't like to admit that. So what I found in the kink community, where everybody negotiates hierarchies in advance, is all of a sudden this new left progressive intersectional feminist ethic started coming in, which eschews and hates hierarchies. They don't like dominance. They don't like non-consensual dominance, but they want to come in and play with people that want to play with dominance. And then they see dominance and they're like, that's icky and you're an oppressive influence. No, we negotiated this. It looks icky to you because it rubs you the wrong way.
These are people on the outside looking into your relationship. It's like, you don't have a dog in the fight, but you're still going to kind of have an opinion about the dog fight?
Because they showed up to the dog fight, and that's... Or,
I bought a ticket.
That's a bad analogy, dog fights. Yeah.
Should have said cockfight. You're right. Yes. If we're going to be talking correct terminology.
So for years in the kink community, people played with the taboo of power. Oh, this one's a long one.
God.
People played with the taboo of power, whether it was slavery fantasies, torture fantasies, inquisition fantasies, sometimes rape play, uniform fetishes, all of this stuff. And like fascist uniforms, cop uniforms, all of that stuff was on the table. And they played with power imbalance. Then all of a sudden this intersectional, equality movement where dominance and power is wrong moved in. And then they started tearing apart the kink community from within, saying, you're not allowed to use that language. You're not allowed to use the word master. You're not allowed to wear that uniform because it's fascist. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. And
those are all implied slights, imaginary hurts that can be on someone. But you want to be suspended by hooks and chains from the roof? Let's go. Yeah, I don't like the terms you use though.
Yeah, master is an oppressive thing.
And what are we doing? What are we doing?
Why are you here? Why are you here.
Because you want to control shit, clearly, right?
Yes, this is the world of taboo. You came into the underworld with your like your broom and your dustpan. You're going to clean it all up. This place has been the underworld for a long fucking time. We've all worked out safe words. If you don't want to participate, don't play. If you're going to be triggered, don't show up. But now you're here and you want it all to be bubble wrapped and safe spaced. Fuck you. And I feel that way about tattooing and punk rock and about everything else that I've been involved in.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point where I'm forcing myself to evolve to a more...
How many more deep, dark holes do you got to crawl into to escape gentrification?
Right.
What's the next dark thing I have to get into just to get away from all these fucking tourists?
God damn it. Yeah, exactly. Gentrified.
That's so funny,
Oh my God, I'm going to put that on FetLife tonight. The gentrification of fucking fetish culture.
That's clearly, that's what's, man.
Master and slaves are taboo now. You're not supposed to use the term master slave. And on that token, watch Underground Railroad if you have Amazon Prime. It'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Well, and like there's this one scene. He's like, "All right, let's teach you to use a whip," and I know how to use whips, but it's like now you know why some people are triggered by whips. But should you be going to a fetish dungeon if that shit is that emotionally upsetting for you? No. Know your place.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
And again, that's my issue with all of that is that it's a perceived slight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a well, I think that hurts me, and it's like, okay, was that ever the intention, or did it actually do any physical harm? No, and you're in a place where physical pain may be part of it for you.
And if you are
I don't know
hurt,
how the words are so much worse than that.
if you are hurt by something that was not intended to hurt you directly, that is a you problem.
Yep.
You don't go to those places.
Jumping in front of bullets, then, man.
Yeah.
You know,
You shot me.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
No, I was shooting. You ran in front of the target.
Running in front of my bullet. Yeah, that's what it is. Right? I'm trying to hit that target audience over there, and you dove in front of it and shut it off, and now it'll never get to them, and they would have enjoyed that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're over 2 hours. This one went long.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking around if you did.
You got some interesting shit at the end there.
Lingerers.
Lingerers.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll check in with you guys later.
Yeah, next one will be 40. I don't know when. A couple weeks.
God, maybe when I'm 40.
Yeah, right.
That's a year and a half away. So let's
It could be.
Let's not take that long.
Could be.
It may be.
Okay, peace,
All right,
love,
bye.
granola.